Chapter 384. The conversation in front of her made Nongju slightly sigh in her heart. Just now, the three of them were using both carrot and stick to force her. But when they met Bai Chongchun, even if Bai Chongchun was aggressive, the three of them had to suppress their anger. This was the prestige of the world's #1 master. The three were experts at the late spirit severing stage, rare top cultivators in the world. They had never been bullied like this before. If it was in the past, they wouldn't have to be so humble. But since the battle in the East Sea, where 16 unconvinced spirit-severing experts were killed by Bai Chongchun, no one in the world dared to go against Bai Chongchun's edge. They were in a stalemate. Nongju said to Bai Chongchun, "Yu Qianchou killed Bing Chengzi's disciple. This old guy is famous for protecting his disciples. Should we tell them that Yu Qianchou is your disciple?" "There's no need. Let this junior solve his own problems with his own ability. I can't help him for a lifetime. However, if someone who shouldn't have interfered, I won't let a single one of them get away." Bai Chongchun expressed his stance through voice transmission. Nongju stared at Bai Chongchun for a while. Her eyes flickered. No one knew what she was thinking. After a long time, he broke the stalemate and said, "Bing Chengzi, my disciple Zi is going to the cultivation world of Huaxia to gain experience. She has no right to interfere in your affairs. If she is really involved in your affairs coincidentally, then let me do it with my own ability. As long as you old guys don't interfere, I will also make my stance clear. I, Nongju, will not interfere with the junior's business." Bing Chengzi and the other two were startled. They didn't expect Nongju to say such words even with Bai Chongchun's support. Wasn't this what they wanted to achieve? Yin Baikong immediately nodded and said, "Brother Nongju is right. This is the junior's business. Us old guys can't interfere. Let the juniors fight with their own abilities." He looked at the other two and said, "Yin Baikong have the same stance as Brother Nongju. What do you two think?" Bing Chengzi and Hu Chongshou's eyes flashed with joy. They had already sworn an oath. Now that Nongju had expressed her stance, they had nothing to worry about and could let their disciples do whatever they wanted. The two of them exchanged glances and nodded in unison. It's settled then. Looking at Nongju, Bai Chongchun was also a little surprised. He didn't expect that Nongju was really willing to let his daughter suffer. It seemed that Bai Chongchun's previous persuasion had stimulated Nongju and ruined his previous plan. Now it was really up to Yu Qianchou and the others. "Since everything has been made clear, we shall not disturb you any further." Yin Baikong cupped his fists towards Bai Chongchun and Nongju. The three of them did not want to stay any longer and shot into the sky. After watching them disappear, Nongju shook her head and said with a bitter smile, "I've given my daughter to your disciple. I hope he won't let me down." Bai Chongchun was speechless. "If I knew you would agree, I wouldn't have come out." What an unnecessary move. It was not convenient for him to say this. If he did, he would be suspected of plotting against Nongju. Bai Chongchun snorted coldly and disappeared with a swing of his sleeve. He returned to the Langxian courtyard in the blessed land of bamboo and continued drinking tea. 2 days later, Yu Qianchou and Zi arrived at a stretch of deep mountains. On the main mountain range between the mountains, there were magnificent buildings that were connected layer by layer. This was the 10,000 Demons, the #1 demonic sect. Before the two of them got close, they heard Qiu Wuyuan's laughter coming from afar. "Brother Yu, you're finally here." Obviously, they were discovered by the people of the 10,000 Demons as soon as they arrived at this area. 5 gray figures came together and stopped in front of the two of them. The one leading them was Qiu Wuyuan. The two of them also stopped flying. Yu Qianchou bowed and said, "Greetings, senior." The other 4 had cold expressions. Yu Qianchou had seen them before. They were the 4 generals of the demon clan who had been following Qiu Wuyuan for a long time. The 4 of them used to be the 4 servants of the previous sect leader. Not only were they high in cultivation, but they were also infamous. Because Qiu Wuyuan had been working outside for a long time, the previous sect leader sent the 4 of them to Qiu Wuyuan. It was probably more to protect his own disciple. "I just received news from the Cultivation Alliance. They said that Chonghua Fairy of the Moon Clan has already vouched for the 2 of you. Now you are also members of the Cultivation Alliance." Qiu Wuyuan laughed. Yu Qianchou and Zi looked at each other. They didn't expect Chonghua Fairy to be so efficient. Qiu Wuyuan raised his hand and said, "Please." The few of them flew directly to the grand palace at the top of the mountain range. The entire palace had the aura of sky-bearing and was indeed magnificent. As soon as they landed in front of the palace, a group of people walked out of the palace. All of them looked serious and flew away, leaving only 3 old men standing in front of the palace. Xueqi, who was originally happy, was slightly stunned. He quickly walked to a gloomy old man with white hair tied up by a black crown in the middle and asked, "Palace Master, did something happen?" So this was the famous palace master of the 10,000 demons, Bu Yunxiao. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he sized him up carefully. Bu Yunxiao nodded with a serious expression and said, "Wu Yuan, I just received news that eldest brother Yan Bugui brought a group of people to the 100 Flowers Valley. They are now in a confrontation with the Cultivation Alliance. Something might happen at any time. Go with the 4 generals of the demon clan. It's best if you can persuade eldest brother not to do anything for Master's sake. I'll go see Master now." "Ah, eldest brother, he. Sigh." Xueqi stomped his feet and sighed. When he turned around and saw Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi, he realized that he almost forgot about them. He immediately turned around and said, "Palace Master, these 2 are Yu Qianqiu and Miss Ziyi. You see." Bu Yunxiao glanced at the 2 and his gloomy face immediately changed into a smile. He cupped his hands and said, "I happen to have something to do. Sorry for the delay." Then he turned around and said to the old man next to him, "Fifth junior brother, take the 2 guests to rest. Don't neglect them. I'll go see Master and come back soon." The 5th junior brother nodded and raised his hand to Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi. He said with a smile, "Please follow me." "There's no need to trouble yourself." Yu Qianqiu bowed to Bu Yunxiao and said, "Palace Master Bu, Ziyi and I have just joined the Cultivation Alliance. Since the Cultivation Alliance is in trouble, we should do our best to help. Since Senior Qiu is going to the 100 Flowers Valley, we decided to go with Senior Qiu. He didn't want to come to the 10,000 demons in the first place. Not only did he not get any benefits, he might even be schemed against by others. If it wasn't for Xueqi, he wouldn't have come. Now, he found an excuse to leave." Bu Yunxiao pondered for a moment before he nodded and said, "If that's the case, I won't force you. After this is over, I hope the 2 of you can give me face and come to my myriad demons palace again. I want to apologize for my poor hospitality this time." "Palace Master, you're too kind." Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said. At the side, Xueqi seemed to be getting impatient. He waved his hand and yelled, "Let's go." He and the 4 generals of the Mo family shot into the sky first. Yu Qianqiu also jumped onto his flying sword and chased after them with Ziyi. "Yu Qianqiu." Bu Yunxiao stared at the figures flying away and mumbled a few words. Then, he shot into the deep mountains. A few figures flew across the sky. Xueqi and the other 4 gradually pulled away from Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi. From this, one could see the difference in cultivation between Yu Qianqiu and them. Of course, it wasn't that Ziyi couldn't fly faster. It was because she had been accompanying Yu Qianqiu the whole time. "Brother Yu, it's an emergency. I'll be going first." Xueqi's voice came from the sky. Then, the 5 in front sped up again. They immediately left the 2 behind further and further behind. "Damn it! If you want to leave, then leave. Why are you shouting so loudly? Are you trying to bully me because I can't fly fast?" Yu Qianqiu turned his head and looked at Ziyi. Luckily, Ziyi didn't care whether she was fast or slow. He slightly regretted that he didn't bring the whole flying instrument. Although it couldn't catch up to the speed of a Tribulation passing cultivator, it was at least faster than him. Moreover, with Ziyi controlling it, he could rest in peace. He had been flying around in the sky for the past few days and didn't really land. However, he immediately dismissed the idea. It seemed that Ziyi didn't know the way. It would be troublesome if she flew further and further away. Ever since Ziyi followed him, she would ask questions at the beginning. Now, no matter where they went, she would look around with her eyes wide open. It was as if she wanted to memorize the terrain of every place she passed. What a stupid idea! Yu Qianqiu found it funny and didn't say anything. The 2 of them flew at a moderate speed. Finally, they arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley before sunset. Yu Qianqiu took out the 100 Flowers Valley entry jade archive and brought Ziyi in. Then, He made an entry jade archive for Ze at the city gate. Ze held it in her hand like it was a treasure and looked at it. Then she said to Yu Qianqiu, "Thank you." Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. Then, he remembered that ever since he brought her out of the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea, this was the first time she had received something that belonged to her. Thinking about how this girl had helped him earn 50 million, Yu Qianqiu felt a little guilty. He decided that tonight, he wouldn't care about anything else. He would be extravagant just for this girl. He couldn't let the horse run away without feeding it grass. Could he? As soon as they arrived at the 100 Flowers Valley, many people immediately recognized Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu didn't care. He brought Ze straight to the best restaurant in the area, the 100 Flowers House. After entering, he knocked on the counter and said, "Give me the best private room with a view to the night view of the 100 Flowers Valley. Give me the best dishes and wine." The innkeeper was obviously a newcomer. He didn't know who Yu Qianqiu was. After looking at the ordinary clothes Yu Qianqiu was wearing, he smiled and said, "The best private room we have here, plus the best dishes and wine, will cost at least 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. Are you sure you want it?" 1,000 high-grade spirit stones? Ziyi's eyes widened. She quickly tugged at Yu Qianqiu and said, "That much? Let's find a cheaper room." Yu Qianqiu wasn't afraid of people being mean to him. He could be even meaner than them. However, he couldn't stand people being nice to him. After hearing Ziyi's words, Yu Qianqiu immediately turned around and slammed his palm on the counter. With a bang sound, he directly collapsed the counter. He shouted in a deep voice, "Are you afraid that I can't afford it?" Ziyi was stunned. She didn't know why he was so angry. The innkeeper saw that the counter had been destroyed. Wasn't this causing trouble? His face immediately darkened. He said sternly, "What are you trying to do?" Someone actually dared to cause trouble at the 100 Flowers House in the 100 Flowers Valley. There were many people inside and outside the store who came to watch the show. Chapter 385. Isn't that Yu Qianqiu? So it's that madman. No wonder. Hearing that, Yu Qianqiu, who was already in a bad mood, immediately took out a big black machete from his storage bag. Wherever the blade pointed, everyone retreated. "Who's tired of living? Why don't you say a few words for me? I'll make sure you're satisfied." Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly with the machete in hand. No one said anything. Sure enough, the bigger the machete, the more intimidating it was. There was an old man in the store who recognized Yu Qianqiu. He quickly whispered a few words into the manager's ear. However, it seemed like the manager had already heard everyone's words, especially that rather unique machete, which was unique in the cultivation world. It was hard not to know who the person in front of him was. Yu Qianqiu turned the machete around and pointed it at the manager. The manager's expression changed. He immediately smiled and said, "So it's Mr. Yu. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. If you have any orders, just tell me. As long as I can do it, I'll do my best." The manager had no choice but to admit defeat. This guy was famous for being a madman in the cultivation world. Was there anyone he didn't dare to hit? No. Was there anyone he didn't dare to kill? No. Even the dignified sect master Ong Guangceng was killed by him, but he was still alive and kicking here. So what if he broke a counter? What was the point of a small manager's face? The blade of that big black machete was just a little bit away from pointing at the manager's head. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and said, "You're a snob. If you don't want me to tear down the 100 Flowers residence, hurry up and prepare a private room." Yu Qianqiu knew how to play this game. Some people weren't afraid of good people, but they were afraid of hooligans. Since his reputation wasn't good, he might as well be unreasonable. The onlookers at the side were convinced. This guy was an out-and-out madman. He came all the way to the 100 Flowers Valley to tear down the 100 Flowers Palace. There would probably be a good show to watch. It was Ziyi's first time seeing such a bandit side of Yu Qianqiu. She was really a little surprised. No need to prepare, no need to prepare. There's an empty private room upstairs. Follow me. The manager carefully moved away from the machete and led the way upstairs. Before Yu Qianqiu went up the stairs, he coldly swept his eyes over the crowd. They all acted as if they didn't care about him and dispersed. But after they left, They gathered at a place not far from the 100 Flowers house and waited, ready to watch the show. Sure enough, as soon as Yu Qianqiu went upstairs, an attendant immediately ran out of the store and flew towards the flower palace. Everyone's eyes lit up, and they continued to wait. Zhang Gui led the two of them to the private room on the top floor and asked them to wait for a moment before he turned and ran down the stairs. The manager here elegant and elegance 8AA there's AAA there. TAA restaurant. AAAU. ZE asked curiously. Is this really a restaurant? What an idiotic question. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. He walked to the window and pushed it open. A cool breeze blew in. It was mixed with the fragrance of the 100 Flowers Valley's flowers. ZE also came after smelling the fragrance. The two of them stood at the window. The sun had just set. A patch of burning clouds dyed the sky red. The mountains were hazy under the twilight. Tired birds flew across the sky and returned to the forest. Downstairs was the market of the 100 Flowers Valley. Although it was already night, it was still bustling with activity. The commoners in the cultivation world lit up their fluorescent stones. They didn't want to give up the chance to earn spirit stones at night. All of this was new to ZE, who stayed in the South Sea purple bamboo forest for a long time. She couldn't get enough of it. She pointed at those people and asked, "What are they doing?" "They're making money like us, of course," Yu Qianqiu replied. "Can we make money like that?" ZE asked doubtfully. Then she nodded and said, "Then let's not leave here. We'll make money here first. It's a waste of time to run around all day. We don't know when we'll be able to complete Senior Bai's trust." Yu Qianqiu turned to look at her. It was the first time he found this one-track-minded girl so cute. He smiled and said, "They want to live a peaceful life. So they're making a small amount of money. But we're making a lot of money. If you follow me, you won't have to make these small amounts of money." Baihua Fairy and her daughter Yan Zixia of Baihua Palace were worried about Yan Bugui and his men. Although they were stopped by the people from the Cultivation Alliance, and Qiu Yuan and the others who came in time to persuade them to leave, Yan Bugui kept saying that he would come every day until the mother and daughter agreed to meet him. The mother and daughter were really tired. But before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. A disciple of Baihua Palace quickly came and reported, "Palace Master, someone from Baihua Palace reported that Yu Qianqiu just caused trouble at Baihua Palace. He even broke the counter. How should we deal with him?" "Yu Qianqiu?" Baihua Fairy was a little surprised and asked, "The one who held the blade drawing ceremony, Yu Qianqiu?" The disciple bowed and said, "It should be him. Someone reported that he even took out that blade to scare everyone. He's very shameless, so it can't be anyone else but him." The mother and daughter exchanged glances. Just a few days ago, they received a message from Ma Jiugu, saying that if they ever run into any trouble in the future, they can look for Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu wouldn't shirk their responsibility and would have a way to solve it for them. The mother and daughter were still confused by this. Although Yu Qianqiu was quite famous in the cultivation world, what problem could he possibly help them solve? But Ma Jiugu wasn't one to speak carelessly. Now, before they even looked for him to solve their problem, he's already causing trouble. "I'll go take a look," Yan Zixia said. As she was about to leave, her mother called out, "Zixia, it's best if you don't go out. If you run into your father, you'll be in trouble again." Baihua Fairy waved her hand at the disciple and said, "Leave. Don't look into Yu Qianqiu's matter. All of his expenses at Baihua Palace will be free." The disciple was a bit surprised, but still followed her words and left. Yan Zixia's eyes flickered as she looked outside the palace, not knowing what she was thinking. After enjoying the scenery for a while, Yu Qianqiu still didn't see any food being served. Just as he was feeling strange, he suddenly noticed that many people downstairs were looking at them as if they were watching a show. Yu Qianqiu's expression suddenly changed. This shopkeeper was clearly stalling for time. He might have gone to Baihua Palace to look for reinforcements. He slammed his palm on the windowsill and said in a low voice, "Do you really think I don't dare to burn down Baihua Palace?" ZE, who was admiring the scenery outside, was surprised, not knowing why he suddenly got angry. At this time the shopkeeper's voice came from outside. "Mister, don't worry, the food is here." As soon as the shopkeeper came in, a few waiters came in with trays of food and wine, quickly arranging them on the table. Yu Qianqiu stared at him and asked, "Why are you so late? Do you want to do something?"
Mister, you misunderstand.
The shopkeeper bowed with a smile. We just received an order from the palace lord. The palace lord said to treat you well, and all the expenses of Baihua Palace will be waived. You see, since the palace lord has already given the order, we naturally don't dare to delay, so the preparation time is a bit long. For this shopkeeper to be sent to be the shopkeeper of Baihua Palace, he wasn't completely useless, he was quite good with words. When Yu Qianqiu heard about the palace lord of Baihua Palace, he immediately remembered Ma Jiugu's request. It would be a bit too much if he continued to make trouble. Seeing that the food and wine were already served, he waved his hand. All of you can leave. Thank the palace lord for her kindness. I will thank her in person if there's a chance. Okay, enjoy. The shopkeeper nodded and bowed, then led the waiters away. Yu Qianqiu walked around the table full of food and wine, and found that the dishes were exquisite, as expected. He waved his hand at Zi, who was looking at him. Eat. He took the lead to sit down, and opened his mouth to eat. It would be a waste not to eat something that didn't cost money. Shopkeeper just said that it's free, does it cost money? Zi sat down and asked. With food in his mouth, Yu Qianqiu nodded repeatedly. It's free, eat as much as you want, otherwise, it will be a waste. Hearing that it really didn't cost money, Ziyi's eyes lit up, and she immediately didn't stand on ceremony. This was what she learned from Yu Qianqiu. Don't be polite when you shouldn't be, otherwise, you would be letting yourself down. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Yu Qianqiu burped, and when he saw Ziyi stop, he was stunned. Only now did he remember something. It seemed that every time he ate, as long as he was still eating, this girl would also not stop, but as soon as he stopped, she would immediately stop eating. It seemed like this girl's appetite wasn't small. She could even keep up with his trip. Yu Qianqiu was happy. He originally wanted to be extravagant for this girl, but he didn't expect that the food and wine would be free, then he would make up for it in other ways. He stood up and smiled. Let's go, I'll bring you out for a walk. Ziyi nodded repeatedly, and stood up as well. She loved to walk around, but it was a pity that during this period of time, she had been flying non-stop in the sky. When the two of them went downstairs, they realized that the broken counter had been replaced with a new one. It was indeed fast. Yu Qianqiu walked over and knocked on the counter, and said, Shopkeeper, reserve 2 good rooms for me, I might have to stay here for a period of time. All right. All right. The shopkeeper hurriedly agreed. This guy couldn't be provoked. Even the higher-ups didn't pursue the matter. What else could he say? After the two of them walked out of the 100-flower pavilion, the shopkeepers of the 4 noble clans, who had been waiting outside for a long time, immediately came over to greet them. Yu Qianqiu had a pleasant expression as he politely persuaded the 4 of them to return and continued strolling around with Zi. The people who were originally prepared to watch the show immediately dispersed in disappointment. They didn't expect that the 100 Flowers Palace actually didn't cause trouble for Yu Qianqiu, and looking at how the shopkeepers of the 4 major families treated Yu Qianqiu, it seemed like the rumor that the 4 major families and Yu Qianqiu were on the same side was indeed true. The prosperity of the shop market was quite tempting to Zi. Seeing every novel thing, she couldn't help but stop to take a look and touch it. She was a little reluctant to let go. Yu Qianqiu was prepared to spend money tonight, so he directly said to the shopkeeper, I'll buy it, how much? 10 mid-grade spirit stones. The shopkeeper replied. Isn't the price a little high? Yu Qianqiu frowned. Mr. Yu, look at what you're saying. I'd fool anyone but you. The shopkeeper thought to himself, you even dared to smash the 100 Flowers house. How would my small stall dare to provoke you? There was no more nonsense. Yu Qianqiu also wouldn't bother with these small shop owners. He directly paid and took the things. So on and so forth. Almost every stall had similar conversations. Zi stopped halfway and asked suspiciously, Why does everyone here seem to know you? Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He refused to answer this question. He directed Ziyi's thoughts back to shopping. He followed behind her, holding a storage bag in his hand. As long as Ziyi stopped to look at or touch something, he could only do 3 things. Ask for the price, pay, and pack the things. It seemed like women were born to be shopaholics, especially when there was a man who was willing to pay with money following them. After shopping at the stalls, the spirit stones were spent like flowing water. The things in the shops were much more expensive than the things in the stalls. Some of them easily cost hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of high-grade spirit stones. Zi didn't care whether she could use it or not. As long as she liked it, she would subconsciously nod at Yu Qianqiu. She didn't think about how much it cost, anyway, Someone was paying. Yu Qianqiu himself also couldn't remember how many types of things he sold, regardless of the size of the items. In any case, he bought almost everything in the stalls and shops. He even filled up 2 storage bags. It was already late at night, there was no more shopping. Ze just remembered that she seemed to have bought a lot of things. She looked at Yu Qianqiu embarrassedly and asked weakly, "It seems like you spent a lot of money." Sigh. Isn't it a little too late to ask this now? Yu Qianqiu's gaze had already answered her question. Ze became even more embarrassed, she said embarrassedly. "I really didn't mean it." I know you didn't mean it." Yu Qianqiu handed over the 3 storage bags and smiled. "Actually, I didn't buy much, I just filled up these 3 storage bags." Ze received the 3 storage bags and used her divine sense to look at them. She was shocked. She didn't expect to buy so many things just by casually strolling around. Carrying the 3 storage bags, she didn't know what to do. She once again weakly asked, "How much did you spend in total?" "It's okay. Consider these things as a gift from me. You can earn more money after you spend it, as long as you are happy." Yu Qianqiu smiled. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu didn't have any intention of blaming her, Ze hugged the storage bags and nodded vigorously. I will definitely help you earn money." She happily put away the 3 storage bags. Today could be said to be a happy day. These words made Yu Qianqiu happy. He liked to hear this the most. He felt that the money spent today was worth it. Just as he was about to bring Ze back to 100 Flowers House to rest, he suddenly saw an old acquaintance from supporting Immortal Island, Xueqi, walking towards him. This fellow used to eat and drink with him in the past, so Xueqi couldn't help but nod and smile. "Long time no see, how have you been?" Ze looked at him curiously. He really had a lot of acquaintances. Xueqi had hung out with him for a few days. They could be considered old friends. He wasn't like the others. He cupped his fists and said happily, "No matter how good I am, I can't compare to you. I heard that you came to 100 Flowers House and caused a ruckus the moment you arrived? You didn't come here just to ask about this, did you?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Xueqi shook his head and said with a serious expression, "Just now the Cultivation Alliance received a challenge Jade Archive sent by Yen Bugui. All the sects in the Cultivation Alliance have received the notice. Elder Quan asked us to inform the other individual cultivators who have already joined the Cultivation Alliance and are in the 100 Flowers Valley to meet at the Cultivation Alliance tomorrow to discuss this matter. I just heard that you are here. The leader of the Moon Clan has already vouched for you. You are now also a member of the Cultivation Alliance. Because we are familiar with each other, I specially came to find you to inform you of this matter. Yen Bugui is challenging the Cultivation Alliance?" Yu Qianqiu frowned and asked again to confirm, "Are you going to meet at the Cultivation Alliance tomorrow?" "Yes, you." "Brother Yu, I won't say any more. I still have to inform the others. We can talk about this later." Xueqi cupped his fists and left. "What does challenging the Cultivation Alliance have to do with me?" Yu Qianqiu muttered softly, turned his head and said to Ze, "Go back and rest." After that, he led Ze, who was like an obedient child, back to 100 Flowers House. Chapter 386. The next day, the sun had already risen high in the sky, but Yu Qianqiu was still sleeping soundly on the bed. He had been flying non-stop for the past few days, and he was indeed a little tired. Normal cultivators would probably meditate to recover, but he preferred the most primitive way of resting: sleeping. Lying on the bed with his legs spread out was also a kind of happiness. Dong, dong, dong. In his dream, he was still in his previous life, and he was discussing physiological problems with a few blonde and blue-eyed ladies. Unfortunately, he was awakened by a series of knocks on the door. He got up and looked around, and he couldn't help but sigh slightly. As expected, he was dreaming. The era of 4 wheels was gone forever. Dong, dong, dong. The knocks on the door continued, and Yu Qianqiu immediately shouted, "Who is it? Who is it? Why are you knocking on the door so early in the morning? Don't you know that you're sleeping?"
He got off the bed unhappily and got up to retract all the black fiend traps that he had set up around him into his body.
He had no choice but to do this. Often, people who schemed against others were also afraid of being schemed against by others. Back then, he had schemed against Lu Zhengguang here. Now that he was living here, he was also worried that he would be schemed against by others. After all, he had offended too many people. He had originally wanted to retreat to Utopia to rest, But he was a little worried about leaving Ze, who was as innocent as a piece of white paper here. Although Ze's cultivation was much higher than his, he was still a little worried. Speaking of which, he didn't know who was protecting who. He walked to the door and pulled it open. Just as he was about to curse, he saw Ze standing outside the door with her hands behind her back. She had an obedient expression, and there was a hint of a fawning expression on her face. This was unprecedented. Needless to say, she was the one who knocked on the door. Yu Qianqiu swallowed back his curses and asked suspiciously, "Why are you knocking on my door so early in the morning?" "It's not early. It's already noon. Didn't someone ask you to go to the Cultivation Alliance last night?" Ze asked. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes, turned around, and went back to his room. As he walked, he said, "In their eyes, we're just two lousy loose cultivators. Why are we involved in that? They have their meeting, and we just have to take care of ourselves." He walked to the side of the bed, tilted his body and fell back down. In fact, he really wanted to get involved. In his words, the more people there were, the more opportunities there were to get rich. But when he thought that Yen Bugui had brought a group of people and had a grudge against him, he decided that it was better to avoid the brunt of the conflict. He did not want to be the one who challenged the Cultivation Alliance. That would not be pleasant. Ze entered the room and said, "But there are people from the 4 great clans waiting for you downstairs. They say they want to wait for you to go with them." "The 4 great families." "Ha!" Yu Qianqiu crawled up and asked, "How did you know? You went down alone?" Ze stuttered and said, "Didn't you say it's a waste not to eat something that doesn't cost money? I think the food in this restaurant is quite delicious, so I went down to order some food by myself. It just so happens that the people from the 4 major families are waiting for you downstairs. I'll help them ask you after I finish eating." "Wouldn't it be a waste not to eat it?" Yu Qianqiu was startled. It seemed that he really did say that to her. She had a strong learning ability. He couldn't sleep anymore. He used the water spell, and a stream of clear water came out of Yu Qianqiu's palm. One stream went into his mouth to clean, and the rest was used to wash his face. After washing, the turbid water gathered into a ball. Yu Qianqiu opened the window, waved his hand, and the water turned into an arrow and shot out. As for where it would land, he was too lazy to think about it. In the end, Ze was completely dumbfounded. There was no one downstairs. They were probably all at the Cultivation Alliance. The 4 great clans sent 8 people. The 4 elders were Bai Shan, Tan Huazong, Jing Shengping, and Wu Anfeng. The 4 of them were at the middle stage of tribulation passing. Except for the elder from the Wu clan who looked familiar, Yu Qianqiu did not know any of them. The remaining 4 people were old acquaintances. They were the first successors of the 4 great clans, Bai Zizong and the other 3. When the 8 of them saw Yu Qianqiu, they all bowed and said, "Mr. Yu." "No need to be so polite. No need to be so polite." Yu Qianqiu smiled and waved his hand. He turned around and said to Ze, "Go, get me the food you had this morning." Ze didn't say anything and went straight to the counter to order. The shopkeeper smiled and nodded, but his smile seemed a little unnatural. "Brother Bai, you guys are here too?" As soon as Yu Qianqiu said this, Bai Zizong and the other 3 quickly said, "We don't dare." Now that the seniority between them was different from before, the 4 of them didn't dare to call him brother anymore. Moreover, there were 4 elders beside him. It wasn't the right time to talk about this in front of everyone. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 4 of them and asked, "What do you want from me?" The 4 elders looked at each other and nodded. Bai Shan, the elder of the Bai clan, stood up and replied, "After the 4 great clans received the Cultivation Alliance's notice, they sent us here overnight. We learned that Sir is in the 100 Flowers Valley and has joined the Cultivation Alliance. Before we left, the elders of the 4 great clans told us that if Sir needs any help, we should do our best to cooperate." Yu Qianqiu smiled non-committally. The waiter of the 100 Flowers house had already served the food. He asked casually, "Do you want to eat together?" Seeing that they shook their heads, he didn't hold back and buried his head in the food. He didn't say anything, and no one knew what he was thinking. The 8 of them were a little speechless. They heard about him smashing the 100 Flowers house as soon as they arrived, and they still ate and lived here. They didn't hear about the people of the 100 Flowers Palace doing anything to him. After eating, Yu Qianqiu patted his stomach, looking very comfortable. Bai Zizong had stayed with him before and knew that he liked to take advantage of others. He immediately went to pay for him, but the shopkeeper didn't accept it. He said that Yu Qianqiu's expenses in the 100 Flowers house were all free, which surprised the 8 of them. Smashing the place and living for free? Was there such a good thing in the world? I heard that the Cultivation Alliance is discussing something. Aren't you 4 great clans going? Yu Qianqiu asked leisurely. Sir, didn't you join the Cultivation Alliance? Didn't you receive the notice? Bai Shan asked curiously. It wasn't hard to guess what he meant. We came here to make our stand and wait for you to go together. Of course, Yu Qianqiu also heard it. He paused and said, Someone did inform me, but I was busy with something important just now, so I was delayed. Then, sir, are you done with what you have on hand? If you're free, let's go together, Bai Shan said politely. Yu Qianqiu wanted to say that he wasn't done, but he happened to meet Ziyi's strange gaze. He couldn't help but feel guilty. Thinking about it, he felt that it wasn't good. If he kept hiding here, he had to go out and get some information. How could he get rich hiding in his room? Moreover, a whole morning had passed. The Cultivation Alliance's discussion was probably almost done. It was the right time to show his face and ask for information. All right, then let's go together. Yu Qianqiu laughed. There were exactly 10 people in the group. As soon as they left the 100 Flowers house, they started pushing each other. The 4 great clans insisted that Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi walk in front. However, Yu Qianqiu didn't want to show off at this time, so he insisted on hiding at the back. In the end, the 4 great clans couldn't persuade him, so they let him and Ziyi follow behind. It didn't take long for the group to reach the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance. At this time, there were already a lot of people around. They were all people who didn't have the right to enter. Seeing that the 4 great clans had arrived, someone immediately jeered. The 4 great clans are so arrogant. Coming at this time, they really don't care about the sex. With one person taking the lead, there were others who had nothing to do and followed suit. The 4 great clans suddenly became the center of attention. Although the 4 great clans weren't happy, they wouldn't argue with these people in public. Moreover, they really came too late, so they could only look at them coldly. The jeering people took advantage of the number of people and saw that the 4 great clans didn't react, so they were very cocky. Damn it! A bunch of hooligans, purposely making me show off. Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. The 4 great clans became the center of attention. He couldn't keep a low profile even if he wanted to hide at the back. Many people realized that the person behind the 4 great clans was Yu Qianqiu, so they all remained silent. However, there were those who were dumb, stupid, and loud. When Yu Qianqiu showed himself, there was a person next to him who was grinning and almost spitting on Yu Qianqiu's face. Bang! A fist smashed heavily on that person's face, and blood and broken teeth flew out. Crack! A foot kicked from the side of that person's calf. The sound of the leg bone breaking was so crisp, and the whole leg was directly broken. Ah! That person fell to the ground and let out a scream. B*tc. Yu Qianqiu finally couldn't help but make a move and scolded. After some people next to that person saw who it was, they all subconsciously took a step back. Just enough time for that person to hug his leg and lie on the ground, howling and rolling. At this time, the surrounding people realized that the person who had just punched and kicked was Yu Qianqiu, and suddenly quieted down. The people from the 4 great clans looked back and were shocked. They didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would actually make a move at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance. However, the effect of this punch and kick was quite good, and the annoying noise was finally gone. The crowd in front immediately made way for them. Yu Qianqiu acted like nothing had happened, and followed behind the 4 great clans. After proving his identity at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance, they walked in together. On the flat ground of the Cultivation Alliance, hundreds of people sat cross-legged in a few circles. In the middle were the representatives of the top 10 sects of the righteous and demonic sections. At this time, they were all looking outside. Everyone first heard many people talking about the 4 great clans, and then heard the screams outside. They didn't know what was going on. All the sects were suspicious. Could it be that the people from the 4 great clans made a move at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance? At this time, the people from the 4 great clans walked in, and all the sects became more and more suspicious. What the hell are you screaming for? Two of you go and see what exactly is going on. Xueqi didn't know what was going on, and he shouted with a bad expression. 2 of the 10,000 demons immediately dashed out. There were many praying mats outside the venue, and the 10 of them each took one and sat at the outermost area. Although Yu Qianqiu wanted to be as low-key as possible, Ziyi's purple clothes were too eye-catching. Once everyone saw Ziyi, their eyes immediately searched for him. Xueqi looked outside, and then looked at Yu Qianqiu with a face full of suspicion. At this time, 2 disciples of the 10,000 demons came back and reported to him, Elder Qiu, a disciple of the six-path demon sect, was beaten outside, but no one saw clearly who did it. The person who was beaten didn't see clearly either. The 2 of them were very depressed. The person who was beaten said that he was ambushed, and he didn't see clearly, but the others all stuttered and said that they didn't see clearly. Yu Qianqiu was even more stunned. There was such a good thing? A figure in the crowd jumped into the air and flipped out of the courtyard. After a while, that person came back in a flash and stood at the periphery, staring angrily at the people from the 4 great clans. He shouted, "Who dares to hurt my disciple? Quickly come out and admit your guilt." Chapter 387. The Hexapath Devil Sect was ranked 4th in the demonic Tao, just below the Corpse Sect. The one who roared at the 4 major families was the chief representative of the Hexapath Devil Sect, Yuan Xueqi. He was an outstanding figure in the demonic Tao, famous for his violent temper and battle prowess. Although the overall strength of the Hexapath Devil Sect wasn't as strong as the other top-ranked sects, Yuan Xueqi's personal strength wasn't any weaker than the other sections. "Who injured my disciple? Come out and accept your punishment." Yuan Xueqi roared once more. When he heard that his disciple was beaten up, he immediately ran out to investigate. Although the disciple didn't see who did it, he said that it was someone from the 4 major families, so he was sure that it was someone from the 4 major families who did it. How could they accept that their disciple was beaten up when all the sects were gathered here? Furthermore, the Hexapath Devil Sect had no reason to be afraid of the 4 major families, so they naturally had to get back their face. The expressions of the people from the 4 great clans changed. This was clearly against the 4 great clans. As a direct descendant of Bai Chongqun, Bai Shan naturally could not let Yu Qianqiu come out to accept his punishment. Just as he was about to stand up and fight back, he was stopped by Yu Qianqiu, who was behind him. Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up. He was still happy when he heard that no one saw who did it, so he wanted to maintain his silence. However, the other party had already pointed at the noses of the 4 major families. If it was any other sect, he would definitely continue to pretend that he didn't know anything. However, the 4 major families were related to him, and they would be of great help to him in the future. He didn't want to disappoint them. "I was the one who did it." Yu Qianqiu admitted it. Everyone had expected this. They were all puzzled. The 4 major families had always been neutral, and they never had any conflicts with any sections. So why would they attack someone at this moment? It was Yu Qianqiu, that madman. That made sense. "It's you." Yuan Xueqi was slightly startled. Then, anger rose in his heart. He pointed his finger and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, don't you dare run amok in the cultivation world just because you're a bandit. Others give you some face, but you really think you're something? I, Yuan Xueqi, have never put a clown like you in my eyes. How dare a scoundrel like you mess around in front of my 6 paths demon sect? Elder brother Yuan, don't be angry, don't be angry." Xueqi flashed over, pulled Yuan Xueqi, and comforted him. "Xueqi, get out of my way." Yuan Xueqi swung his arm, turned around, pointed at Xueqi's nose, and scolded, "I've always heard that you and this scoundrel are brothers. It's because of people like you that this scoundrel can run amok in the cultivation world. Don't call me elder brother in the future, or it will dirty my ears." Scram. Yuan Xueqi's words could be said to have hit the hearts of the people present. Although Yu Qianqiu was happy in the cultivation world, the sects that had been in the cultivation world for many years didn't really look up to Yu Qianqiu. If it wasn't for the ambiguous attitude of Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons towards Yu Qianqiu, someone would have already made a move on Yu Qianqiu. Not to mention that Yu Qianqiu had the support of the 4 major families. Yuan Xueqi's words were like a wake-up call to Yu Qianqiu. When he looked at the people in charge of the other sects, almost all of them looked down on him. Clearly, they all agreed with Yuan Xueqi's words. Yu Qianchou immediately understood his position in the cultivation world. When he suddenly attacked someone at the entrance earlier, he subconsciously thought that he was afraid of anyone because he was a scoundrel. He thought he was impressive, but in the eyes of the people with a certain level of status in the large sects, they did not look up to him at all. He could only scare those little disciples who didn't have much of a cultivation base. How dare you! Just when Yuan Jiuque told Qiu Wuyuan to piss off, for bellows rang out. The 4 generals of the Mo family in black furs arrived with a flash and surrounded Yuan Jiuque. Yuan Jiuque glanced around and snorted coldly. 9 people immediately shot out from the crowd and surrounded the 4 generals of the Mo family. They were clearly from the Hexapath demon sect. When I was dominating the world, the 4 of you were still slaves to Yan Wuchen, yet you dare to yell at me now. Are you trying to rebel? Yuan Jiuque sneered. Then he waved his hand at the 9 people from the Hexapath demon sect and called out, "Leave! I'd like to see just what the 4 generals of the 10,000 demons are capable of." The domineering nature of a demonic cultivator was completely revealed in just a few words. Everyone was slightly speechless. It seemed like Yuan Jiuque wanted to deal with the 4 generals of the Mo family alone. The people from the Hexapath demon sect did not say anything else and backed down. After being called slaves, the 4 generals of the Mo family remained cold. They were not angered at all, but they began to radiate with pressing killing intent. Qiu Wuyuan was not a good-tempered person either, but his expression immediately returned to normal. He immediately yelled out, "Stop messing around, all of you back off." Hearing that, the 4 generals of the Mo family immediately flashed behind him. They did not even hesitate at all. "Brother Yuan, calm down. Let's talk things out. There's nothing that can't be resolved." Qiu Wuyuan was already giving face by saying something like that after being scolded. Otherwise, there was no reason for the 10,000 demons to be afraid of Yuan Jiuque with their status in the demonic sections. That's right. Now that we're facing a great enemy, let's just bear with it for now. Wen Zhongping from the Blood Demon Palace originally wanted to watch the show between the 10,000 demons, but seeing that Qiu Wuyuan had given in, he knew that he couldn't watch it anymore, so he stood up and said something nice. After all, the righteous sects wanted to watch the show between the demonic sects more than him. The demonic sects could watch it, but the righteous sects could not. When Zi saw that Yu Qianchou was in a daze after being scolded, her pretty face immediately turned cold. Senior Bai's disciple was not someone that could be scolded. She stood up and slowly walked towards Yuan Jiuque. The whole place instantly became incomparably quiet. Yuan Jiuque vigilantly looked back, and his pupils shrank. He immediately turned around and got into a fighting stance. He could look down on Yu Qianchou, but he didn't dare to look down on Zi. This mysterious woman had fought against 7 experts in the final phase of Tribulation passing. He knew that he was no match for her, but he couldn't lose the reputation of the Hexapath demon sect. Qiu Wuyuan and Wen Zhongping looked at each other. This woman was not an ordinary person. Her background was mysterious, and they didn't know what her temper was like. The 2 of them didn't know what to do. Yuan Jiuque stared at Yu Qianchou and sneered, "A scoundrel is a scoundrel. He actually needs a woman to stand up for him." "Yuan Jiuque, watch your mouth. What's wrong with a woman?" A woman's voice sounded. In the field, 10 disciples in white from the Moon Clan stood up. The leading woman flashed over. It was Hua Yinue, the elder of the Moon Clan. Hua Yinue had already received a message from Jade Flower Fairy, asking her to protect Yu Qianchou and Zi to the best of her ability. Yuan Jiuque's words just now finally gave her an excuse. The righteous people were all stunned. How come things were getting more and more complicated? Originally, they only wanted to see the diabolism become a joke, but now even the righteous people were involved. In a second, everyone understood. Yu Qianchou and Zi had joined the Cultivation Alliance with the Moon Clan as their guarantor. The Moon Clan was using this as a pretext to make a fuss. The Fuxian Island and the Moon Clan had always been on good terms. Quan Deming also couldn't sit still. He flashed between the 2 groups and comforted, "Everyone, let's talk this out. Don't be impulsive. The matter of Yen Bugue's challenge hasn't been decided yet. If we start fighting among ourselves, we'll become a laughingstock." Being blocked by a group of women, Yuan Jiuque himself was also stunned. "Zi, come back." Yu Qianchou's voice attracted everyone's attention. He walked forward and bowed deeply to Yuan Xueqi. Senior Yuan, please calm down. I was too impulsive just now. Please forgive me. He had thought it through. He had to lower his head when it was necessary. Otherwise, it would be hard for him to integrate into this circle. If he didn't integrate into this circle, it would be hard for him to find a chance to make a fortune. He had to bear with it even if he felt uncomfortable. When his strength matured, he would be able to deal with anyone he wanted. When the various sects heard his words, they immediately felt that it was strange. This madman had always been unforgiving when he had the upper hand. Currently, with the appearance of Xueqi and the others, it was clear that he had already gained the upper hand. Yet, he still ran out to apologize with such a sincere attitude. It was truly surprising. Qiu Yuan stared at Yu Qianqiu with sparkling eyes. He wondered if he had seen wrongly. Although Yuan Xueqi's attitude was commendable, he had crippled a disciple of the Six Paths Devil sect. Naturally, Yuan Xueqi wouldn't let this matter rest just because of an apology. Yuan Xueqi glared at Lin Yun and said, "Are you trying to let this matter go with just a sentence? May I know what this junior should do to appease senior?" Yu Qianqiu asked respectfully. Yuan Xueqi's gaze slowly shifted to Lin Yun's leg. He said in a solemn voice, "I won't say anything else. You broke the left leg of my disciple. If you can break your own leg, this old man will be able to answer to the sect when I return. This old man can also guarantee that the Six Paths Devil sect will treat this matter as if it never happened." The people of the four major clans also stood behind Yu Qianqiu when they heard this. They glared at Yuan Xueqi. The legs of a little disciple with low cultivation actually wanted to trade for the legs of their old ancestor's direct disciple. If they allowed this to happen, they wouldn't be able to return to the four major clans anymore. Xueqi looked at Yu Qianqiu with an expressionless face. As long as he gave the signal, she would immediately make a move. The other sects also felt that Yuan Xueqi's condition was a bit too harsh. They suspected that he didn't know how to appreciate favors. Sure enough, Yu Qianqiu's expression sank in an instant. He rubbed his nose as he looked at the crowd and sneered, "It's not difficult for me to break one of my legs, but I have something to ask all of you. Although the four great clans and I arrived a bit late, it's fine if everyone provoked and insulted us at the entrance. After all, we were the ones who were rude first." He suddenly turned around and pointed at Yuan Xueqi. He shouted, "But what gives a disciple of the Six Paths Devil sect the right to spit on my face in public? If I spit on your face, will you attack me? I'm afraid you'll even have the heart to kill me, right? There's such a thing? Then he's really asking for a beating." Everyone immediately whispered in each other's ears. Everyone had indeed heard the commotion outside, provoking and insulting the four clans. In such a chaotic situation, there was no guarantee that some naughty disciples would spit on the four clans. Yuan Xueqi was startled when he heard that. How did the Six Paths Devil sect become the ones who stirred up trouble first? But after thinking about it, he was afraid that it was really possible. He paused and said with some uncertainty, "That's not possible." "Hee. I've never been afraid of anyone." Yu Qianqiu looked around and sneered, "I know that everyone has a lot of misunderstandings about me, causing my reputation in the cultivation world to be bad. But I'm not a deranged person. How could I randomly grab someone and beat them? If Senior Yuan doesn't believe me, why don't you summon the disciple who was beaten? I can confront him directly. Who is right and who is wrong will naturally be clear." Chapter 388. Yuan Xueqi's expression became gloomy. He wasn't completely clueless about that disciple, and he knew that the disciple wasn't very virtuous. But now, as Yu Qianqiu had said, he wanted to interrogate the disciple and find out that his side was in the wrong first. If that happened, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? Most importantly, he thought that he was in the right, and offended several groups of people. He even threw away the face of the Devil Path's leader, the 10,000 demons. If the truth came out, and it was disadvantageous to his side, he would be embarrassed. While he was hesitating, many people could see his apprehension. Qiu Yuan winked at Wen Zhongping and pulled Yuan Xueqi with a smile. "Old brother Yuan, for my sake, this matter ends here. Don't pursue it anymore. I'll send someone to treat that disciple's injury, and I'll definitely return him a healthy leg." "That's right. Old brother Yuan, personal grudges are a small matter, but take the big picture into consideration. Wen Zhongping also persuaded. Yuan Jiukui naturally understood that these two demonic cultivators were taking the opportunity to give him a way out. If he didn't appreciate it, then he wouldn't know how to appreciate a favor. But he didn't know if Yu Qianzhou would fight to the bitter end. This guy was famous for being merciless. Yuan Jiukui looked at Yu Qianzhou. Qiu Wuyuan understood his meaning, so he walked over to Yu Qianzhou with a smile, patted his shoulder, and said, "Old brother Yu, give this old brother some face, and forget it. How about we end this matter here? Since Senior Qiu has spoken, we can swallow this small grievance." Yu Qianzhou also looked at Yuan Jiukui and said, "I wonder if Senior Yuan still wants to pursue this matter." Humph. Yuan Jiukui snorted heavily, then flashed back to his original position and sat down cross-legged. His attitude was obvious, indicating that he wouldn't pursue this matter any further. "What are you snorting about? Let's see if you still dare to snort when this father destroys your Six Paths Demon sect one day." Yu Qianzhou's brows twitched. "It's better if this father doesn't pursue this matter, then I won't waste my breath." He also turned around and returned to his seat. "It's all right. It's all right. Everyone, return to your positions." Qiu Wuyuan waved his hand at the crowd and smiled. The group of people returned to their positions, and this matter was over for the time being. Ziyi was still feeling quite indignant. She looked at Yu Qianzhou beside her and wondered what had happened to him. Yesterday, he had smashed someone's counter because of a single sentence, and today, he was scolded in the nose and endured it. Yu Qianzhou had already put this matter aside for the time being. He had thought that the discussion between the various sects had already ended, but who would have thought that it was still going on? He had no idea what had happened for it to take such a long time. He sat at the back and listened for a while before he understood. It turns out that this time, Yan Bugui brought 2 Tribulation Realm cultivators with him, as well as 50 Tribulation Realm cultivators. A total of 53 people came to Baihua Palace, intending to reunite with Baihua Ferry as husband and wife. In the end, they were obstructed by the various sects led by the supporting Immortal Island. At that time, both sides almost came to blows. It was unknown what Yan Bugui was thinking, but when he had the upper hand, he forcefully endured it. Actually, everyone understood that Yan Bugui wasn't ready to officially turn against the Chinese cultivation world yet. He was probably still waiting for the foreign cultivation world's reinforcements to arrive, and the foreign cultivation world was probably also coordinating this matter. And the Chinese cultivation world wasn't ready either. The main reason was that there were too many sects, so it was hard for them to reach a consensus. The main problem was that once a fight broke out, who would contribute how much money, how much manpower, and who would be the commander? The righteous sects didn't feel at ease handing over manpower and money to the demonic sects, and vice versa. In fact, no one felt at ease handing over their own things to others. A large-scale war wasn't just a fight between two people. Once a winner was decided, they would have to be prepared for a long period of time. The longer it lasted, the more spirit stones and manpower would be consumed, and that would be a huge number. Although all the sects had stored a lot of spirit stones for emergencies, no one would take out their money for no reason. Who didn't hope that they would contribute less money and manpower, while others would contribute more? After the war, the strength of the sects might be reshuffled. Everyone wanted to preserve their strength. The foreign cultivation world on Yan Bugui's side, as well as the Chinese cultivation world, were probably facing the same awkward situation, so they didn't start fighting for the time being. In short, whoever was ready first would make the first move. That was for sure. If they couldn't officially turn against each other, they could at least do something like East Wind West Wind, dampening the other party's morale. And so last night, Yan Bugui suddenly sent someone to deliver a challenge Jade archive to the Cultivation Alliance. The content was very simple. Both sides would send their people to fight 20 rounds. Regardless of whether they were dead or alive, the winner would be determined by the number of wins and losses. The loser would have to pay 1 billion high-grade spirit stones to the winner. Of course, the challenge couldn't be without rules. It was impossible for one side to send an early-stage tribulation passing cultivator to fight, while the other side sent a late-stage tribulation passing cultivator to kill the other side. That wouldn't be a challenge. It would be no different from seeking death. Yan Bugui's letter of challenge stated that either side could send their people to challenge the other side first. One person could go on stage repeatedly, but the person sent by the challenged side couldn't have a higher cultivation level than the challenger. Of course, if the challenged side was willing to send someone with a lower cultivation level to die, the opposing side naturally wouldn't have any objections. That night, the Chinese cultivation world replied, "Accept the challenge." This was something that couldn't be avoided. Whoever dared to say the word avoid would probably be drowned in spittle. But 1 billion high-grade spirit stones couldn't possibly be given to a single sect. When it came to apportioning the money and manpower, it would be a little difficult. Anyone could make the argument, but the key was which sect would contribute the money and manpower? Thus, after discussing for half a day, they still couldn't come up with a solution. In short, everyone had thousands of reasons, all of which were for them to contribute less. 1 billion high-grade spirit stones. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, his eyes almost emitted a green light, and he and Purple Dress looked at each other in unison. Yan Bu Gue came from the 10,000 demons, and now he has become the scourge of the Chinese cultivation world. For this challenge, the 10,000 demons can't absolve themselves from the blame. I'm not saying that the 10,000 demons will pay all of the 1 billion high-grade spirit stones, but the 10,000 demons still have to pay the most. Before De Luo Sec's Zhu Xianxian could finish, Qiu Wuyuan jumped up and scolded, "Bullsh*T. Yan Bu Gue has long established his own sect. He is him, and the 10,000 demons is 10,000 demons. If the Da Luo sect doesn't want to pay, then just say it. Don't always use this as an excuse. This is the whole Chinese cultivation world's business, not the 10,000 demons' business." "Qiuwen, what you said is wrong. Why didn't someone like Yan Bu Gue come from other sects, but from the 10,000 demons? If it wasn't for the 10,000 demons' lack of discipline, this wouldn't have happened. I think Elder Zhu is right. The 10,000 demons should pay the most." The one who said this was the Sword Faction's Elder Duan Tianhua, who was ranked 4th in the righteous sections. "That's right. That's right." A group of righteous sects echoed, and they all pointed their spears at the 10,000 demons. The expressions of the demons kept changing. Logically speaking, they should be supporting the 10,000 demons, but only the 10,000 demons could be used against them. If they had to pay more, then so be it. After all, the 10,000 demons had a lot of money, so this amount of money was nothing. Yu Qianqiu finally understood. No wonder he saw Qiu Wuyuan's face the moment he came in. He had become the target of everyone's attacks. Sigh. Yan Bu Gue had caused trouble, and now the 10,000 demons had become the scapegoat. It was really hard on Qiu Wuyuan, who had been running around outside. "Duan Tianhua, you're not a good person either. You call yourself a righteous sect, but you're faster than anyone else when something happens. Fine. If you think that this has nothing to do with your sword faction, then please withdraw from the Cultivation Alliance. We, the 10,000 demons, will pay for your sword faction's money." Qiu Wuyuan pointed at Duan Tianhua's nose and scolded him. Then, he looked around at the crowd and patted his chest loudly. "If the righteous sects think that this has nothing to do with you, you can all withdraw from the Cultivation Alliance. We, the 10,000 demons, will pay for the righteous sect's money." A bunch of shameless people who call themselves righteous sects, tui. Qiu Wuyuan argued with the crowd. He was so angry that his face was red. After he said those harsh words, a few righteous sects immediately stood up and said, "Qiu Wuyuan, speak clearly. Who are you calling shameless?" "I'm calling a bunch of cowards. Whoever wants to cower in this matter, I'll scold them. Whoever wants to fight, I'll play with them." Qiu Wuyuan was too lazy to argue anymore. He could not argue clearly anyway. He would die of exhaustion if he kept arguing with so many people. He happened to glance at Yu Qianqiu just now, and his heart lit up. Although he was not as good with words as Yu Qianqiu and could always reason, he could learn from Yu Qianqiu and act shamelessly, right? Who can still snatch money from me? As soon as the righteous sect stood up, there was no need to mention the 4 generals of the demon clan. A few other sects from the demon clan also stood up. It was fine if they just talked about it, but if they really fought, the other sects from the demon clan would definitely not let the 10,000 demons suffer losses. This time it was lively. As one of the sects stood up, the second one stood up. In the end, the situation of the 10,000 demons alone became a situation where the righteous and the demon clan were fighting. Qiu Wuyuan's pressure was instantly reduced. He glanced at Yu Qianqiu, who was pinching his chin and watching the show. He thought to himself, No wonder this guy could always stir up big trouble with just a little bit of it. This shameless method was just a try, and immediately one family's problem became everyone's problem. At the same time, he could also save himself some trouble. It was worth learning. The situation was a little out of control. The four great clans had always been neutral. They did not belong to the demon clan or the righteous clan. A few people looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was pinching his chin, and decided to just watch the show. Yu Qianqiu was very happy in his heart. The representatives from the various sects really did not disappoint the sections. They did their best to fight for the greatest benefits for their sections. Everyone, please calm down. I have an idea, but I don't know if everyone is willing to listen to it. Quan Deming from Fu Xian Island saw that the commotion was getting out of hand. He frowned and thought for a while, then immediately shouted. Hearing that there was an idea, and it might even be related to their sects, everyone immediately quieted down and looked at Quan Deming. The latter waved his hand and said, "Everyone sit down. It's not a solution to keep arguing like this. Listen to me slowly." Zhou Yuan took the lead and sat down first. After everyone started arguing, he did not say anything. Instead, he stayed out of it. The people from the various sects also sat down one after another. Chapter 389. Quan Deming stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. He scanned the crowd and said slowly, "If possible, the top 10 sects of the righteous and demon sects should share the 1 billion. Before he could finish, Yuan Xueqi laughed and said, "That's not a good idea. How can our wealth compare to your supporting Immortal Island? This seems to be unfair." "Brother Yuan, why don't you listen to Elder Quan first? I believe Elder Quan won't speak without thinking." Zhou Yuan stopped him. In fact, even if there was nothing else, he would agree with this. 20 sects would share 1 billion, and each sect would only get 50 million. This was worth it. "All right, I'll listen to supporting Xian Island's opinion." Yuan Xueqi smiled disapprovingly. Quan Deming nodded and said, 1 billion is not a small number, but it would be a joke to ask the entire Chinese cultivation world to share it. My suggestion is that supporting Xian Island and 10,000 demons each contribute 100 million. Daluo sect, Moon sect, Blood Demon Palace, and Corpse sect each contribute 50 million. Our 6 sects will take 400 million, and the remaining 600 million will be shared by the other 14 sections. What do you all think? Hearing this, other than the top 10 sects of the righteous and demon sects, the other sects all nodded in agreement. They were not allowed to contribute even 1 spiritual stone. It would be strange if they didn't agree. "I think it's fine." Zhou Yuan also stood up and patted his chest. 10,000 demons will contribute this 100 million. 100 million was far better than 10,000 demons. Plus, 10,000 demons was the leader of the demonic sects, so it was reasonable for them to contribute a little more than the other sections. A leader should have the bearing of a leader. "I think it's fine." "Fine." The Daluo sect, Moon sect, Blood Demon Palace, and Corpse sect naturally wouldn't have any objections. First of all, Fuxian Island and 10,000 demons offered twice as much as them. Second, with their status in the cultivation world, offering 50 million was just an average amount. If they still had any objections, it would be too unreasonable. The other 14 sects felt that it was not worth it. The 600 million would be divided among the 14 sects, and each sect would have to share more than 40 million. It was not much different from 20 sects sharing it equally, but most people agreed. It would not be difficult for them to fork out this amount of money. In addition, the few leading sects had already agreed, so it would not be good for anyone to say no. Thus, it was equivalent to tacitly agreeing. "Elder Quan, since we have all paid, how should we divide the 1 billion high-grade spirit stones if we win?" Yuan Xueqi suddenly asked. The other sects also stared at Quan Deming. "That's right." The matter of splitting the money had to be made clear, otherwise there would be problems later on. "That's easy," Quan Deming said eloquently. "There are only 20 matches in total. Since 20 sects have paid up, I believe that it won't be a problem for 20 of our sects to randomly send out 20 people. The 20 sects that have paid up can all send their people up to fight. If they win, the sect that pays the money will take back the money that the other sects have to share. The 1 billion earned will be divided into 20 portions. As long as the sect wins one match, they will get 50 million. The number of matches they win will be the same. If the sect wins all 20 matches, they will take all the 1 billion earned. My supporting Immortal Island will not have any objections. If we lose in the end, everyone can only admit that they are useless. They will definitely not give us the money for free. Haha. Everyone roared with laughter. This was a fair method, so no one had any objections. At least, if they won, they would not lose money. In addition, of course, the more effort they put in, the more benefits they would get. This logic was reasonable everywhere. Just when everyone thought the problem had been solved, Xueqi suddenly stood up and said, I still feel that something is wrong. This was a good method, and it was already considered fair. What was wrong with it? Xueqi turned around and said with a slight frown, Brother Yuan, could it be that you have another brilliant idea? Xueqi pointed at the 4 major families and said in a clear voice, The combined strength of the 4 major families is not weaker than some of the top 10 sections. I think the 4 major families should also participate. The remaining 600 million will be divided equally among the 15 families. Each family will get 40 million, which is just right. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. How could he easily believe the words of that scoundrel, Yu Qianqiu? But he had tacitly agreed not to pursue the matter. Thinking about it, he felt uncomfortable. When he remembered that the 4 major families were on the same side as Yu Qianqiu, he came up with this idea. If they won this challenge, they could talk about it later. If they lost, they could let the 4 major families lose some money. It could also make those people feel disgusted. Everyone knew that Xueqi still had grievances in his heart. They all looked at the 4 major families. Presumably, the 4 major families would not be able to refuse in this situation. Sure enough, Bai Shan stood up and said, Although the 4 major families do not belong to the righteous or demonic sects, we are also part of China. It is reasonable for us to contribute money. After saying that, he sat down. This was also a sign of agreement. Yu Qianqiu was happy in his heart. He was worried that he could not find an excuse to intervene and make money. Now, the opportunity came to him. That kid outside did not beat him for nothing. Since the 4 major families have agreed, if there is no other objection, then this matter is settled. Quan Deming asked Xueqi, Elder Qiu, what do you think? I have no objection. Just let me know when you want to pay. 10,000 demons will not refuse. Xueqi laughed. He was in a good mood now that a troublesome matter had been solved. Quan Deming nodded and said to the crowd, The other party has more than 50 experts in the crossing calamity stage and 2 in the final stage. If you want to take this opportunity to make money, you might as well call for experts from your sect. This is much faster than us working hard to earn spirit stones from the spirit stone mine. Everyone laughed and suddenly became spirited, as if it was not difficult to make money. Most people felt that this matter did not concern them and finally did not have to worry. After the matter was settled, the group of people dispersed, leaving a large pile of praying mats on the ground. Naturally, the unlucky disciples on duty would come to clean it up. Ignoring the strange gazes of the outsiders, Yu Qianqiu and the others followed Bai Shan to the Bai family's shop. They had something to discuss. There were some decorations here, so their conversation would not be easily overheard. The shopkeeper of the Bai family's shop had already heard about Yu Qianqiu beating people at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance. He was speechless when he saw him. It was hard to imagine how the family could be entangled with such a person. After leading them to the back, the shopkeeper left. The matters of the higher-ups were not something that a shopkeeper like him could care about. The date set by the Cultivation Alliance and Yen Bugue was tomorrow. Remembering that the other party had 2 experts in the final stage of the Crossing Calamity stage, after a discussion, Bai Shan said solemnly, Since we have agreed to participate, we must prevent accidents. I will send a message back now and ask the family to invite 2 elders to come here overnight in case of emergencies. The others also nodded and felt that this was appropriate. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu rubbed his hands and laughed. That is too troublesome. Why bother 2 elders to come here overnight? I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it. Wasn't he talking nonsense? If he said it, how could the people of the 4 families not let him say it? The attitude of the 8 people immediately became respectful. Bai Shan cupped his hands and said, If you have something to say, please say it. We are all ears. Ha 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 ha. Yu Qianqiu couldn't stop laughing shyly. He seemed to be a little embarrassed.
After a while, he rubbed his hands and said, "This is what I think.
For this challenge, the 4 families just need to put their names on it. I will pay the 40 million, and Ze and I will fight. You don't have to worry about it.
As for that, if we win, haha.
You know that I am a little short of money. We can keep the money we win for the time being. What do you think of my idea?" For money again. The few people looked at each other. Bai Shan looked at him and said suspiciously, "I wonder what stage has Mr.'s cultivation reached? Please tell us, so that we can be prepared."
Haha.
Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "I am really ashamed. I am still in the early stage of nascent soul." The few people looked at each other and didn't say anything. Although it was already very fast for him to reach this stage at his age, this challenge was not a trivial matter. It was not a matter of life and death. Bai Shan shook his head and said, "Please forgive me, mister. I dare not let you take this risk. If there is any accident, I really can't explain to the family." "What are you afraid of? Isn't Luo Qingtian at the crossing calamity stage? Didn't you still lose to me in the end? You don't have to worry. It is settled. Send the news back. If the 4 families have any objections, let them come to me. You don't need to explain anything." Yu Qianqiu seemed to be more interested in money than his life. He turned around and said to Ze, "Ze, I will leave the last stage of the crossing calamity stage to you. Do you have the confidence to win?"
Yes.
Ze nodded. At the side, Bai Zizong and the other 3 looked at Ze with complicated expressions.
There was a hint of admiration in their gazes.
She was beautiful, pure, and had an extraordinary temperament. In addition, she had a high cultivation base and a mysterious background. She was indeed quite tempting. This time, the 4 of them had been sent here to build a good relationship with Yu Qianqiu. However, at the same time, they had received a rather ambiguous mission. If possible, it would be best if they could develop feelings for Ze. Other than Wu Liqing, the other 3 were a little unwilling at first because they had never seen her before. Who knew what kind of person she was? But they also knew that for a big family like theirs, sometimes they couldn't make decisions about relationships. However, when they saw Ze, they were all attracted. They didn't expect a cultivator in the last stage of the crossing calamity stage to be so young and beautiful. They were immediately attracted. However, such a beautiful woman was ordered around by Yu Qianqiu as a maid. It was really a pity. However, they were relieved. Yu Qianqiu clearly didn't have any other relationship with Ze. When you attack, don't be soft. If you can kill them, don't let them go. Even if you let them go, they won't be grateful. Before you go, think about what my master did when 16 soul-forming cultivators joined hands to fight against him. As long as they are your opponents, don't let any of them go. Don't be soft. Kill them all. Yu Qianqiu warned earnestly. He was afraid that Ze would be soft because she didn't have much experience. In a battle of life and death, she would be at a disadvantage. This girl was most convinced by Changchun. At this time, he could only bring up Changchun to strengthen her confidence. However, when these words fell into the ears of the 4 families, they were shocked. They all knew who Yu Qianqiu's master was. In other words, their ancestors' cultivation was so strong that it was shocking. Chapter 390. Ziyi's gaze instantly became firm, and she nodded her head seriously. Bai Shan cupped his hands and bowed to Yu Qianqiu excitedly. "Sir, can you tell us in detail about the Battle of the East Sea that you mentioned just now?" The people of the 4 great clans all cast expectant gazes at Yu Qianqiu. The legendary Battle of the Soul Formation stage was indeed worthy of admiration. Furthermore, the most powerful protagonists were their own relatives, so the anticipation was even stronger. "Tell you in detail?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned.
He thought to himself, "I heard it from Nongzhu, that old handsome guy.
How can I tell you in detail?"
He looked serious and sighed. "I can only be fascinated. It's indescribable. Indescribable. That kind of realm is beyond our reach.
Let's not talk about it." Ze rarely spoke in front of outsiders.
At this moment, she clenched her fists and said in a woman's voice, "Elder Bai is undoubtedly the most powerful cultivator in the world.
Ze will admire you for life. Her words were even more inspiring than Yu Qianqiu's. The people from the 4 major families were extremely excited, especially the people from the Bai family. They blushed and couldn't express their emotions for a long time. Ah, Zi, let's go back. Yu Qianqiu turned around and kept shaking his head and sighing as if he had really seen the battle. Zi followed him and left, leaving the people from the 4 major families to daydream. They imagined how the thin elder in the portrait in the ancestral hall of their family looked in reality. He was undoubtedly the most powerful cultivator in the world. If I can't see our ancestor once in this life, I, Bai Zizong, will regret it for the rest of my life, Bai Zizong, who had been standing in silence for a long time, suddenly said while gritting his teeth. Bai Shan let out a long sigh and said, "It's not easy to see our ancestor. Didn't you hear what your father said? The great ancestor was the punishment enforcer of the demon ghost realm and lived in the center of the demon ghost realm. Even if you were at the end of the Tribulation transcendent stage, you would not be able to go deep into the demon ghost realm, let alone the place where the great ancestor lived. If you really want to go, the only way is to rely on Yu Qianqiu. If Yu Qianqiu is willing to introduce you, it shouldn't be a big problem." Bai Zizong suddenly turned his head and said, "Third uncle, if Li Cheng and the other 3 could be personally taught by our ancestor, once we succeed in our cultivation, we would be able to learn 1/100th of our ancestor's abilities. Who in the Chinese cultivation world would dare to make things difficult for us? I don't understand why the old ancestor would not care about his own descendants and instead accept an outsider as a personal disciple. Could it be that none of us descendants can enter the old ancestor's eyes?" This sudden statement stunned the people of the 4 families. Tan Fei, Wu Liqing, and Jing's were all breathed rapidly. Needless to say, it would be beneficial to be taught by the great ancestor of the world's #1 expert. When the 4 heirs thought of the extraordinary purple dress following beside Yu Qianqiu, their expressions became a little strange. "How dare you?" Bai Shan suddenly shouted. "Bai Zizong, are you out of your mind? How can the great ancestor's thoughts be guessed by ordinary people? The great ancestor must have his own reasons for doing this. It's not something you can comment on." "Third uncle, don't tell me you still don't understand?" Bai Zizong pointed in the direction where the 2 of them went and said angrily, "Who is the hidden force behind him? Could he really comprehend such a mysterious and strange technique by himself? Who gave him those 2 treasured sabers? Without a doubt, all of these were given to him by the great ancestor. Otherwise, how could a lowly disciple like him surpass our cultivation base in such a short period of time? He dares to do whatever he wants in the cultivation world because he has the great ancestor's support. I don't understand why the great ancestor would do this. Jealousy always makes people lose their minds easily. When Yu Qianqiu was just a lowly disciple, Bai Shan could still bow down to him. Now, Yu Qianqiu was higher than him in every aspect. Even his seniority was higher than him. When he saw that Zi was obedient to Yu Qianqiu's words, an unknown fire completely ignited the dissatisfaction in his heart. Although Wu Liqing and the other 2 had similar thoughts, they never had such strong feelings. They were stunned by Bai Zizong's words. They did not expect Bai Zizong to say something like this. Tan Huazong, Jing Shangping, and Wu Anfeng looked at each other. Bai Shan was trembling with anger. He pointed his finger and yelled, "Bastard, kneel down!" Bai Zizong clenched his teeth and kneeled in front of Bai Shan. His expression showed his unwillingness. Bai Shan said bitterly, "Without the great ancestor, there would be no 4 major clans. Jealousy blinds your eyes. You can't achieve anything. How dare you talk about the great ancestor's right and wrong? Do you think you're qualified to take over the Bai clan in the future? You treacherous bastard. Slap yourself." Slap, slap, slap. Bai Zizong slapped his own mouth without saying anything. He slapped his own mouth again and again. Wu Liqing and the other 2 did not know what to do. Tan Huazong and the other 2 quickly advised, "Brother Bai, it's enough to teach him a lesson. It's understandable for a young man to say something rash. You don't have to go overboard." Bai Zizong, who was slapping himself, suddenly stopped. He touched his face, shook his head and smiled bitterly. He kowtowed to Bai Shan and said, "Third uncle, I know I'm wrong. I was blinded by jealousy just now and said something rash. Please forgive me." The few of them were speechless by his sudden change. Yanbu Gue and the Cultivation Alliance's challenge location was in a mountain not too far away from the 100 Flowers Valley. To be exact, It should be in a valley surrounded by mountains. It took some effort to choose this place. People could stand around and watch, and the spacious valley in the middle was just right for the fight. There were probably thousands of people on the surrounding mountains. This was the result of the sects restraining their disciples. Otherwise, there would be more people coming to watch the fight. On Yen Bu Gui's side, there were about 50 people including himself. From their clothes, most of them were cultivators from other clans. These dozens of people stood on the mountain top facing the many cultivators, but they did not show any fear. It was as if they were looking down on the cultivators of China. Both sides had already sent people to the middle to discuss the start of the fight. Ever since Yen Bu Gui found out that Yu Qianzhou was among the crowd on the opposite mountain top, his eyes rarely moved, filled with hatred. If it wasn't for this guy, his family wouldn't be in such an awkward situation. The husband and wife couldn't be together, they colluded with other clans to protect themselves, and even their sect became enemies. Now that they had reached a point where it was either win or die, there was no way out. How could Yu Qianzhou not notice Yen Bu Gui, who was the center of attention? Seeing that he kept staring at him, he didn't want to compete with Yen Bu Gui with his stare, but it was uncomfortable to be stared at like that. He looked around and found the position of the 10,000 demons. They were not far away, so he slowly walked to the side of Qiu Yun and bowed. "Greetings, Senior Qiu." Greetings, greetings, greetings. Qiu Yun looked him up and down. When did this guy become so proactive? It seemed like he was always the one looking for him first. Therefore, with a stomach full of questions, he asked, "Brother Yu, are you looking for me?" The 10,000 demons also looked at him. "Haha. Nothing, nothing." Yu Qianzhou looked around with a face full of smiles. "The weather today is really good." The 10,000 demons were not in a good mood. None of them were happy that the son of the previous sect leader had caused such trouble. Thinking about the possibility of fighting him again, they felt even more depressed. At this moment, Yu Qianzhou came over to talk about the weather. The group looked at the sky and felt that it was normal. They didn't notice anything special, but they suspected that there was a deeper meaning behind his words. They were all confused. "Are you really okay?" Qiu Yun asked doubtfully. I'm fine. Yu Qianzhou confirmed it again. Then, he was too lazy to talk nonsense beside Qiu Yun. He seemed to be chatting happily with the 10,000 demons from time to time, creating a harmonious atmosphere. The 10,000 demons reluctantly answered him. They didn't have the mood to talk nonsense with him now. But when this scene fell into the eyes of Yen Bu Gui, who was on the opposite mountain, he was so disgusted that he almost broke his teeth from gritting them. What the hell is this guy doing? Qiu Yun cursed silently. The more Yu Qianzhou said that he was fine, the more suspicious he became. He and Yu Qianzhou had known each other for a long time. At that time, Yu Qianzhou hadn't joined Fuxian Island yet. Once they met, Yu Qianzhou started to flatter Qiu Yun. Qiu Yun already knew that this guy wasn't a good person. What happened later also confirmed his guess. Now that he suddenly acted like this, Qiu Yun started to look around suspiciously. When his eyes met the hateful eyes on the opposite mountain, he was stunned. Then, he understood everything. This guy was obviously using the 10,000 demons to make Yen Bu Gui angry. He was vicious. Qiu Yun looked at Yu Qianzhou, who was still talking nonsense with the 10,000 demons. His expression changed. He said in a low voice, "Yu Qianzhou, you've achieved your goal. Go back to your position." Senior Qiu, what do you mean by that? Yu Qianzhou pretended to be confused. "Please go back." Qiu Yun raised his hand and said bluntly. The dignified Myriad Demon's Palace, the leader of the demonic path, had been used by this fellow like a bunch of blind people. How could they possibly have the nerve to explain themselves so clearly? Yu Qianzhou's expression darkened. He said in a cold voice, "It seems that I'm not welcome in the 10,000 demons. I originally wanted to shamelessly ask to join the 10,000 demons after the competition. That's why I came here to get in touch with you guys. It seems that I was thinking too much." Humph. Elder Qiu, please help me thank Palace Leader Bu for inviting me in person. It's not that I don't know what's good for me, but the threshold to join the 10,000 demons is too high. Yu Qianzhou, can't cross it. Goodbye. He waved his hand and walked away. The 10,000 demons looked at Qiu Yun in surprise. For someone like Yu Qianzhou, who had mysterious skills and a spiritual treasure, the 10,000 demons couldn't wait to recruit him. Why did you chase him away? One of the late Tribulation cultivators who rushed here overnight asked in a low voice. Xueqi, what's going on? Xueqi was speechless. He thought to himself, did I really think too much and misunderstand? If this guy really wants to join the 10,000 demons, then I. Chapter 391. Some people who were paying attention to Yu Qianchou saw him strolling to the 10,000 demon side and chatting happily with the top demonic factions people. But for some reason, he came back with a long face. The people from the 4 clans looked at each other. Ze stared at him for a while and finally couldn't help but ask, what's wrong? Yu Qianchou expressionlessly said, nothing, I just solved a small problem. Ze frowned. Why was he still unhappy after solving the problem? She wasn't a talkative person, so she didn't ask. She followed everyone's gaze to the valley. The challenge was about to begin. Both sides seemed to have reached an agreement. Each side handed over 1 billion spirit stones to a middleman, the 10,000 demons. Right now, the only middleman that could be accepted by both sides was the 10,000 demons. Everything that needed to be prepared was ready, so there was nothing to be said. There wasn't even anyone to judge. It seemed that this kind of battle to the death didn't need anyone to judge. The rules had already been set. Apart from the people who escaped from the valley, the rest had no other choice. One of them died, and the other lived. It was easy to determine the winner and loser. However, once they went on stage, the possibility of them escaping was very low. No sect could afford to lose face like this. They would definitely punish the people who escaped after the battle. The top 10 sects of the righteous and demonic sects had already gathered their experts. Especially the supporting Immortal Island. They had 2 experts at the final stage of the Tribulation passing stage and 10 experts at the Tribulation passing stage from the Cultivation Pavilion. Dongfang Chang'eo was one of them. It was obvious that the supporting Immortal Island was complacent and wanted to use this challenge to prove their position as the top sect in the world. The 10,000 demons, the leader of the demonic faction, was destined to be unable to compete with the supporting Immortal Island in this matter. Those who knew a little about the cultivation world knew that the supporting Immortal Island was in the hands of the Guan clan while the 10,000 demons were in the hands of the Yen clan. Yen Bugue was the only son of the 10,000 demons' previous leader Yen Wuchen, and the current leader Bu Yunxiao's senior brother. If Yen Wuchen didn't die, the 10,000 demons wouldn't dare to do anything to him. After the spirit stones were handed over, the valley quieted down. There was only the sound of the mountain wind. Everyone was looking around, not knowing who would be the first to challenge, and who would be the first to accept the challenge. Damn! What were they waiting for? Yu Qianchou looked around, wishing he could go up first. Unfortunately, his cultivation level was too low. If he went up first, his opponent's cultivation levels would be above the crossing tribulation stage. According to the rules, they wouldn't be able to challenge him, so going up first would be pointless. According to the rules, those with high cultivation bases could not challenge those with low cultivation bases, while those with low cultivation bases could challenge those with high cultivation bases. However, it seemed that the possibility of the second scenario happening was very low, because it was practically courting death. China's cultivation world didn't know much about the foreign cultivation world, so the sects wanted to send someone to explore the world first before making a move. Yen Bugue, on the other hand, knew the situation of China's cultivation world very well. He wanted to see who would go first before sending someone to deal with the challenge. This was one of the reasons why he was determined to win. The mentality of both sides caused a temporary stalemate. Yu Qianchou decided to wait a little longer when he thought about the possibility of earning 50 million. If no one went up, he would let Ze go. At this moment, Dongfang Chang'eo of the supporting Immortal Island slowly took out a golden spear from his storage bag, attracting everyone's attention. It seemed like the supporting Immortal Island was going to be the first to fight. The supporting Immortal Island was known as the top sect in the world. It might not matter to other sects if this stalemate continued, but the supporting Immortal Island couldn't do this because it was the top sect in the world. Dongfang Chang'eo had been representing the image of the supporting Immortal Island for a long time, so he had to fight first. It's him again. Yu Qianchou stared at Dongfang Chang'eo with a trace of pity in his eyes. He couldn't help but sigh. Dongfang Chang'eo was simply a desperate man of the supporting Immortal Island.
He was always at the forefront. Sigh. Heroes would eventually reach their twilight, and even a fine horse would stumble. If this went on, he was destined to become a tragic figure. A figure flashed, and Dongfang Chang'eo was already standing in the middle of the valley. The luxurious grass covered him up to his knees. He held his spear and shouted, "Middle-stage tribulation passing cultivator of the supporting immortal island, Dongfang Chang'eo, accepts the challenge. Who wants to die?" His last sentence was especially sonorous, and his voice echoed in the valley for a long time. "Good," someone shouted. Everyone looked toward the source of the voice and saw Yu Qianqiu taking the lead in clapping and clamoring. Everyone was slightly stunned. Someone from the Cultivation Alliance immediately followed suit. Then, the cheers and applause were continuous, and the atmosphere was immediately livened up. Yu Qianqiu didn't mean anything else. First of all, there was finally someone to light up the fire. Second of all, Dongfang Chang'eo was a real man in his heart. The applause and cheers were not wrong for him. Ziyi looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise. She didn't expect the crowd to have such a big reaction. Driven by the atmosphere, she couldn't help but applaud. Wu Liqing and the other two looked at Bai Zizong. Bai Zizong smiled bitterly at them and applauded. Dongfang Chang'eo tilted his head and looked at Yu Qianqiu. He nodded and thanked him. It was enough for a man to be cheered by another man for something that he had held on to for his whole life. In the end, he met Qiu Wu Yuan of the 10,000 demons. These two represented the leaders of the righteous and evil sects. For the glory of their sects, they fought for everything and never gave in. Qiu Wu Yuan looked at Dongfang Chang'eo with an inexplicable expression. He sighed slightly and looked away. This was the first time he gave in to Dongfang Chang'eo. Only the two of them could understand that kind of feeling. Yu Qianqiu's atmosphere was getting stronger. Dongfang Chang'eo's fighting spirit increased. He suddenly turned around and pointed at Yan Bugue and the others on a mountain. He shouted, "Dongfang Chang'eo is here. Who wants to fight me?" Good. This time, there was no need for anyone to take the lead. The crowd had already pushed the applause and cheers to the climax. Yan Bugue retracted his resentful gaze from Yu Qianqiu. He looked around and snorted coldly. He slowly walked in front of a person and said in a deep voice, "Mr. Yan, I'm sure you've heard of this person. He can be considered a famous figure in Fuxian Island. His golden source spear is an upper-grade magical treasure. He rarely has a match. Although your cultivation is similar to his, and the black dragon whip in your hand can more or less restrain the spear, don't underestimate him. I'll leave this battle to you." "I've long wanted to meet this person." The cultivator called Mr. Yen chuckled. He gently pulled on a long black whip that was tied to his naked upper body, and it smoothly slid into his hand before coiling into a bundle. He swept down from the mountain and stood about 10 meters away from Dongfang Chang'eo. He chuckled and said, "Xueqi country's tribulation passing middle stage cultivator, Yan Biao, is here to challenge you." As soon as he arrived, the surrounding area immediately quieted down. All eyes were focused on the two of them. When Dongfang Chang'eo saw the whip in Yan Biao's hand, he slightly raised his eyebrows. He raised his spear and shouted, "Foreign cultivator, how dare you mess with the Chinese cultivation world?" Dang! The spear turned into a phantom and smashed down. Dongfang Chang'eo made the first move. With a loud boom, a long, deep hole appeared on the ground. The airwave sent the surrounding weeds flying. Yan Biao couldn't be hit just like that. He had already disappeared. "I've long heard of Dongfang Chang'eo's great name. Now that I see it, you're so clumsy." The voice came from the sky. Yan Biao stopped in the air. The long whip in his hand had already been released. It was like a spirit snake flying in the air. It was extremely nimble. The people of the Cultivation Alliance were shocked. The Chinese cultivation world was good at using flying swords, but this was the first time they had seen someone using a whip. The two late-stage tribulation-passing elders of Fuxian Island were called Jin Yan and Fan Benlei. Their faces revealed a faint trace of worry. The whip could restrain the spear. In addition, it could be used like a sword. They were afraid that Dongfang Chang'eo would be in danger. Dongfang Chang'eo didn't even raise his head. He straightened his spear and pierced the sky. Whoosh! A golden light shot out from the spearhead and shot toward Yan Biao. While Yan Biao was speaking,
His hands were already forming messy hand seals. The long black whip coiled up in the air. The raised whip head was pitch black like a cone, as if it was refined from a beast's horn or tooth. When the golden light shot over, Yen Biao didn't dodge. He pointed his finger, and the long whip whizzed out. The cone-like whip head directly collided with the golden light. Bang! A wave of air exploded. The golden light shot out from the spear was instantly defeated in the air. The long whip, however, shot toward Dongfang Chang'eo like an arrow. Everyone watching was shocked by the sharpness of the whip. At the same time, they were worried for the person below. Dongfang Chang'eo raised his head and took a glance. Then, he shot into the sky and swung his spear horizontally. With a pang sound, he directly knocked away the whip and raised his spear to chase after Yen Biao in the sky. The latter smiled ferociously. He raised his hand and pointed. Dongfang Chang'eo suddenly felt that something was wrong. He quickly glanced to his left and right. Suddenly, he heard a whoosh sound coming from behind him. He looked back and saw that the whip that he had just knocked away was coming again. Bang! He turned around and raised his spear to knock the whip away again. But the whip was just knocked away. It bounced in the air and came back to life. In the blink of an eye, it wrapped around him again. Dongfang Chang'eo didn't have time to care about Yen Biao. He waved his spear and fought with a strange whip. On the other hand, Yen Biao, who was in the air, only needed to control the whip with ease. Dongfang Chang'eo was already at a disadvantage. If this continued, he would consume too much of his true essence. If his reaction was a little slow, he was afraid that he would be at a disadvantage. Yu Qianqiu could see that Dongfang Chang'eo wasn't really inferior to that guy. The key was that the guy's whip was too strange. It couldn't be killed or broken. It was really entangled. Dongfang Chang'eo couldn't display his strength at all. Damn it! No one knew what would happen next. Losing one more round might decide the outcome of the battle. This was related to the ownership of 1 billion yuan. I've invested 40 million yuan. I can't lose money no matter what. Yu Qianqiu frowned. He suddenly turned to Bai Shan and asked, if someone threw a treasure down the mountain and happened to be picked up by Dongfang Chang'eo, it wouldn't be against the rules, right? Ah! Bai Shan looked at him in shock. He didn't know what he meant. Chapter 392. The people at the side immediately reacted and thought of his two unusually sharp sabers. Could it be that he wanted to throw his sabers out for Dongfang Chang'eo to use? It seemed that the sabers could not be taken away by others. Bai Shan pondered for a moment and said, if someone accidentally drops something down the mountain, as long as they don't interfere with the battle, it shouldn't be considered a violation of the rules as to who picked it up and who used it. Accidentally? Yu Qianqiu looked at Bai Shan and laughed, thinking to himself that this guy really knew how to talk. Looking back at the battle site, the crackling sounds echoed in the valley. Dongfang Chang'eo was still entangled with the whip. Whether it was the spear in his hand that was sharp enough to provoke or smash, it could not hurt the whip at all. Needless to say, to be able to resist the spear in Dongfang Chang'eo's hand, this whip must be an upper-grade magical weapon. The whip was strong and flexible in the air. The head and tail of the whip coordinated with each other to attack. As soon as the tip of the whip was knocked away by the spear, the tail of the whip pierced through the air, causing Dongfang Chang'eo to be extremely busy. It was as if he was in a muddy pond, unable to escape and unable to use his strength. He did not even have the chance to fight with Yen Biao. However, it was not easy for the whip to hit Dongfang Chang'eo. At least under the situation where Dongfang Chang'eo could still sustain his energy consumption. No matter how fierce the whip's attack was, it could not get close to him. However, Yen Biao was still smiling as he looked at Dongfang Chang'eo, who was entangled with the whip. He was very leisurely making hand seals. Great! Yen Bugue and the others at the mountaintop also applauded and cheered. If this continued, they would definitely win the first round. The people of the Cultivation Alliance did not look too good, especially those from supporting Xian Island. Losing the first battle would not only affect the Huaxia cultivation world and supporting Xian Island, but also Dongfang Chang'eo would have to live in seclusion on supporting Xian Island for a long time. He would never be able to represent supporting Xian Island again. Hearing the arrogant shouts coming from the other side, Dongfang Chang'eo was enraged. He knew what it would mean if he lost this battle. Therefore, with a red face, he let out a loud shout, then consumed a great deal of Zhan Yuan to continuously shoot out a sharp golden light from the spearhead. Finally, he managed to force the snake-like whip to retreat for a while. His bloodshot eyes glared at the sky, and Dongfang Chang'eo seized the chance to quickly raise his spear and charge forward. Yan Biao was shocked. Actually, he himself was clearly aware that if he didn't rely on the sharpness of his whip, his strength would probably be much inferior to his opponent. Now that his opponent had not completely fallen into a hopeless situation, he ignored the rapid consumption of Zhan Yuan and escaped. He didn't have any magical treasures in his hands. Once his opponent caught up with him, wouldn't it be a dead end? He quickly made hand seals to recall the black dragon whip, and his body also quickly dodged. The golden light from Dongfang Chang'eo's spear barely brushed past his feet, and Yan Biao was immediately scared out of his wits. What a fast speed! His opponent's strength was indeed a notch higher than his. Just a little bit more and he would have lost both his feet. Yan Bugui and the others were also shocked. Since his opponent had dodged, he had already lost the chance to chase after him. The long whip had already caught up with him, and Dongfang Chang'eo was once again trapped in the shadow of the whip. He also understood that once the counterattack just now failed, his opponent would not give him a chance to suddenly get close to him again. The sudden change in the situation made the Cultivation Alliance's morale rise. They didn't expect that they would still fail, and their hearts fell to the bottom again. How could everyone not see that Dongfang Chang'eo probably had no chance to win anymore, and now it was just a battle of attrition? Countless people shook their heads in pity for Dongfang Chang'eo. He was obviously strong, but he was tormented by a whip until he couldn't use his strength. They were afraid that the outcome was already decided. Qiu Wuyuan of the 10,000 demons had been staring at the figure entangled by the whip in mid-air. His eyes were wide open, and they were also bloodshot. His fists were clenched so tightly that there was a muffled sound, and his chest was heaving up and down violently. His opponent of many years might die in such an unjust battle. He suddenly felt that there was a stuffiness in his chest that he couldn't breathe out, and he was about to suffocate to death. He didn't know why either. The situation was grim. It's time to negotiate. Dongfang Chang'eo, you'll have to fight one more time. Yu Qianqiu pursed his lips. While everyone was watching with rapt attention, he walked out swaggeringly, and slowly walked to the side of the people from supporting Xian Island. There was still someone in the mood to stroll at this time, and it naturally attracted many people's attention. It was this guy again. Previously, he went to the 10,000 demons side, and this time, he came to supporting Xian Island's side. What was he trying to do? Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. The mountain was a little sloped, and he stood under the eyes of the people from supporting Xian Island, silently watching Dongfang Chang'eo brandishing his long whip. The people from supporting Xian Island looked at each other, not knowing what this guy was doing here at this time. Quan Deming was currently the representative here, and he couldn't help but ask, Yu Qianqiu, what's the matter? Ah! Yu Qianqiu looked back in a daze, and then looked left and right as if he had accidentally walked here. He immediately walked up and moved to Quan Deming's side, cupped his fist slightly, and said, Elder Quan, I have something to ask. I noticed that Elder Dongfang's strength is obviously stronger than Yan Biao, but his spear is restrained by that long whip. I have something I don't understand. Don't you have any treasures that can break this long whip? If you do, why not throw it into the battlefield now? As long as you don't interfere with the duel, it won't be against the rules. Quan Deming turned around to look at the two consecrators behind him and frowned. I don't know what this whip is made of, but it's soft and not strenuous at all. It's not something that can be countered by ordinary treasures, unless there's an exceptionally sharp treasure that can break it in one fell swoop. It's not that our supporting Xian Island doesn't have such treasures, but they aren't in our hands at the moment, and it's too late to go back and get them. At this point, Quan Deming suddenly stopped talking, and everyone from supporting Xian Island also looked at Yu Qianqiu. Speaking of the sharpness of treasures, who had seen a treasure sharper than Yu Qianqiu's sabers? Even the sword of De Luo Sect's sect master was easily cut into 3 pieces, so it shouldn't be a problem to deal with this whip. Everyone's eyes lit up, but they immediately remembered that not everyone could pick up the sabers. Dongfang Chang'eo had also tried, but he couldn't pick it up at all. Thinking about it was a waste of time, and everyone shook their heads in regret. Yu Qianqiu nodded, and he rubbed his chin as he muttered, Speaking of spears, I do have a treasure spear here. Although it's not as strong as my sabers, its sharpness isn't inferior to the sabers, and it might even be better. I just don't know if it can break this long whip. He wasn't afraid that people from other sects would hear him, because if someone released their divine senses to listen in, they would be discovered by supporting Xian Island. His words were no less than a sweet bait, and everyone's eyes lit up. There was actually a treasure spear that was sharper than his sabers, so how could it not break the long whip? Quan Deming was astounded, and he asked, Yu Qianqiu, is what you said true? Yu Qianqiu silently turned around, and he frowned. Elder Quan, this isn't the first time we've met, so when have you seen me lie? His tone was a little unhappy. That's not what I meant. Quan Deming explained, what I meant was, can you take out your treasure spear and let us take a look at it? Yu Qianqiu looked at the situation of the battle, and he reckoned that Dongfang Chang'ao would be able to hold on for a while longer. Thus he shook his head and sighed. Sigh. I have a few good treasures with me, and they were all given to me by a senior. He once told me that unless it's an emergency, I can't simply show these treasures to others, and I can't give them to others to use without permission. I've already promised him, so it's not convenient for me to break my promise. May I know which senior it is? Why don't you tell us? Perhaps he has a good relationship with supporting Xian Island, Quan Deming said. He has been in seclusion for many years, so I'm afraid you won't know him. Yu Qianqiu thought of a person, and he casually made up a story, Nan Ming Old Ancestor. While Quan Deming was still thinking, the two consecrators at the end of the tribulation passing stage behind him exclaimed, What? It's him. Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. F***CK. I've blown my trumpet. There's really someone in supporting Xian Island who knows Nanming Old Ancestor? Quan Deming turned around and bowed. Consecrators, is there really such a person? Why haven't I heard of him before? Jin Yen said with a solemn expression, It's normal that you haven't heard of him. This person was a person from over 1,000 years ago, and he was a wandering cultivator who hid in the cultivation world. Over 1,000 years ago, when the sect leader of supporting Xian Island went out for a tour, he coincidentally met an expert at the end of the tribulation passing stage. Not only was this person's cultivation level profound, but he was also a top-notch expert in smithing. His smithing skills were simply extraordinary and wonderful. Sect leader Ren wanted to befriend him, but the other party was unwilling to acknowledge him. In the end, sect leader Ren asked for his name, but the other party only said, Nanming Old Ancestor, and left. After that, supporting Xian Island sent people to secretly investigate this Nanming Old Ancestor, but it's a pity that we didn't have the chance to meet him again. That's right. Fan Benlei nodded and said, Most people don't even know about this. I've only seen it in the secret records of Nurturing Heart Pavilion. According to sect leader Ren's description, with the smithing skills of that Nanming Old Ancestor, it shouldn't be difficult for him to forge a treasure spear. But this was already a matter from over 1,000 years ago. If this person is really still alive, then wouldn't he be over 1,000 years old? When everyone heard this, they immediately thought of a possibility. If that person was still alive, wouldn't his cultivation level have already reached the legendary soul formation stage? Think about it, even if Yu Qianqiu was spouting nonsense, it couldn't be so coincidental. Putting aside the fact that the name was the same, to be able to take out such a treasure, wouldn't it coincide with the secret of Nanming Old Ancestor being a smithing expert? Like I said, I've only heard of this Nanming Old Ancestor from He Li. How could you possibly know him? Yu Qianqiu's brows moved slightly, and he suddenly sighed and said, Your sect leader Ren really missed the opportunity to meet Nanming Old Ancestor. This Nanming Old Ancestor he loves spirit stones. If supporting Xian Island's sect leader Ren could lure him with spirit stones, it wouldn't be difficult to make him stay on your supporting Xian Island. Sigh. He did give me some treasures, but it's a pity that he forced me to search for spirit stones for him. I'm really worried to death. If Nanming Old Ancestor really heard this, he would probably jump in anger. Who said I love spirit stones? I don't even know who Yu Qianqiu are. When did I force you to search for spirit stones? Chapter 393. Ancestor Nanming liked spirit stones? The people of supporting Immortals Island finally understood why Yu Qianqiu and the purple-clothed lady were so frantically accumulating wealth after their appearance. It turned out that there was an inside story. Jin Yen and Fan Benlei looked at each other. While Yu Qianchou was looking at the duel in midair, they gave Quan Deming a look. Quan Deming nodded his head in understanding. He turned to Yu Qianchou and said, Yu Qianchou, can we borrow that spear for a while? Yu Qianchou paused and said with some difficulty, I know what you mean. You want to borrow the spear for Elder Dongfang to use, but I promised Ancestor Nanming that I can't easily take out the treasures he bestowed, and I can't let others use them without permission. Otherwise, it's very likely that he will take them back. Elder Quan, you have to know that I'm prepared to use these treasures to save my life at a critical moment. If they were to be taken back, what would I do when I encounter danger in the future? Most importantly, I've always kept my promises. You guys better think of another way. We can pay spirit stones to rent it from Ancestor Nanming. What do you think? Quan Deming said. Yu Qianchou smiled bitterly and said, Elder Quan, it's not that I don't want to promise you, but Ancestor is at the ends of the earth. Even if you rent it from him, I'm afraid that by the time you get the news that he agrees, it'll be too late. Do you think it's still necessary? Can you make this decision on behalf of Ancestor Nanming? Quan Deming asked. Me. Yu Qianchou pointed at himself and then fell silent. He seemed to be thinking about something in the silence. After a while he nodded, but then he shook his head and said, As long as there are spirit stones, I can make the decision. But you guys don't know Ancestor Nanming's character. He won't care about a small amount. His appetite is a little big. It was unknown whether he was feeling guilty when he said this. Was it the Nanming ancestor whom he had never met that had a huge appetite, or was it him who had a huge appetite? Quan Deming glanced at Dongfang Chang'ao, who was fighting in grief and indignation. With a firm expression he said, Name a number that the Nanming ancestor can accept. As long as it's not too outrageous, we won't make things difficult for you. The greatest significance of supporting Immortal Island's first appearance was not to win spirit stones, but to save face. For the number one sect in the world, reputation was sometimes more important than spirit stones. Ze and the people from the four major clans were no longer in the mood to watch the fight. From time to time, they would look at the people from supporting Xian Island. They didn't know what Yu Qianchou was doing with the people from supporting Xian Island. He kept talking non-stop. As for Bai Zizong and the other three who were standing at the back, their gazes often stopped on the graceful silhouette of the lady in purple in front of them, sinking deeper and deeper. Yuan Xueqi from the Six Paths Demon sect had questioned the disciple who was beaten yesterday, but that disciple refused to admit that he spat on Yu Qianchou. As a result, Yuan Xueqi's hateful gaze couldn't leave Yu Qianchou today. Now that he had finished visiting the 10,000 demons side, he went to the supporting Xian Island side. At first, he thought that this kid was really capable to be able to win over both the righteous and demonic sections. But now, he felt that something was wrong. Yuan Xueqi looked at the scene doubtfully. Dongfang Chang'ao was in imminent danger, but the people from supporting Xian Island were busy chatting with Yu Qianchou. Even the two consecrators in the final stage of the Tribulation passing realm were hitting on him. This was like seeing a ghost. Could it be that supporting Xian Island wasn't worried about Dongfang Chang'ao's safety at all? Impossible. Dongfang Chang'ao represented the face of supporting Xian Island. This huge doubt made Yuan Xueqi feel as if he had been enlightened. He couldn't help but regret his impulsive actions yesterday. Supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons were not kind people. Since the two sects and Yu Qianchou were so accommodating, they must know something that others didn't. It seemed like he had to spend more effort to investigate. Otherwise, it would be too late to regret when he suffered a loss. Yu Qianchou lowered his head and pondered when he heard this. He thought to himself, I've played hard to get, so I'm not going to play anymore? Not only will they not believe me, they will also say that I'm greedy. It's not good to play too much. It'll be bad if I lose everything. So he let out a sigh and nodded solemnly. Okay. Since Elder Quan has already put it this way, I'll brace up my courage and make a decision on behalf of Ancestor Nanming. A fixed price of 50 million high-grade spiritual stones is really the lowest I can go. Ancestor Nanming really won't be interested in anything less than this. You can decide for yourselves. It would cost 50 million just to rent it. Even if supporting Immortal Island saved up this amount of money, it would still take many years. The people of supporting Xian Island looked at each other, but they couldn't delay any longer. Dongfang Chong Ao's safety and supporting Xian Island's face were worth more than 50 million. Jin Yen said in a deep voice, Yu Qianqiu, I promise you on behalf of supporting Xian Island. However, I have to say something first. What if the spear isn't as sharp as you said and we make a mistake? I've never lied. Is Senior doubting my credibility? Fine, I'll risk the treasure being taken back by ancestor Nan Ming. I'll say this here. If the spear's sharpness isn't what I said, you don't have to give me a single spiritual stone. Yu Qianqiu's face was full of righteousness, and his words were filled with awe-inspiring righteousness. Jin Yen nodded. All right, it's settled then. However, we don't have that many spiritual stones on us, so we'll have to temporarily Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted him. It's fine to give it to you after the matter is over. I've been on supporting Xian Island for so many years, so I have some confidence in supporting Xian Island. However, I have to make it clear in advance that the spear can't be used by you indefinitely. It's only for Elder Dongfang's match. Supporting Xian Island had never thought of taking his things. Moreover, since Yu Qianqiu was so straightforward, Jin Yen immediately agreed. All right, let's use the spear. I have to remind everyone that Ancestor Nan Ming is afraid that people will pry into the secrets of the treasures he refined, so he set up extremely powerful restrictions on them. I've asked him to set up the same restrictions on my 2 treasured sabers, so you must not use your divine senses to check them. Once your divine senses come into contact with them, they'll be immediately damaged, Yu Qianqiu warned. Everyone from supporting Xian Island was astonished. It turned out that the reason why the 2 sabers could hurt people's divine senses was because of the restrictions. There was actually such a powerful restriction in this world. That ancestor Nan Ming really wasn't someone an ordinary person could compare to. After everyone agreed, Yu Qianqiu put his hand into his storage bag. After searching for a while, he suddenly muttered strangely, Could it be that I forgot to bring it with me? That's impossible. When everyone heard this, they almost fainted. After wasting so much time talking, he actually said that he forgot to bring it with him. Jin Yen's face was ashen as he said, Yu Qianqiu, are you kidding me? Look carefully. I found it, Yu Qianqiu shouted. He didn't mean to dawdle, but the huge sabers that he made with his black flames were a little too crude. This time, since he was pretending to be the spear refined by ancestor Nan Ming, he naturally had to look like a treasure spear. Otherwise, if they were all crudely made, it would be strange if they didn't suspect that they came from the same family. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to fool them even if he wanted to. Thus, after some preparation, he put his hand into his storage bag and used his black flames to carefully suppress it. That was why he spent some time. Everyone from supporting Xian Island's gaze followed Yu Qianqiu's hand as it slowly moved. This action instantly attracted the attention of everyone on the surrounding mountains. What were those fellows from supporting Xian Island doing? Dongfang Chang'ao was fighting with his life on the line. Could it be that they still had the mood to do something else? The spear's tail that was slowly pulled out was black. It was formed by 2 malevolent beast claws, and the fine scales on the claws were vivid and lifelike. The spear's tail had just been revealed when a terrifying feeling of deterrence emanated from the storage bag. Yu Qianqiu suddenly pulled out the spear and casually inserted it into the ground beside him. With a pu sound, even the spear's tail could easily be inserted into the mountain rocks. The spear's body was about 2 meters long, and it was completely black. The spear's shaft was as thick as a child's arm, and it looked like it was covered in scales. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that there were 9 angry dragon carvings bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws. They looked as if they were about to leap out of the spear's shaft. From the front, the spear's blade looked like a flat dragon head opening its mouth and roaring angrily at the sky. The spear's blade had broken through the dragon's fangs and emerged from the dragon's open mouth. On top of the original 2-meter-long spear's body, there was a sharp edge that was half a meter long. The center of the spear bulged out while the edges were thin, and it even carried a dense barb. The spear's entire body was pitch black, and it didn't reflect any light in the sunlight. It was truly a mystery what it had been forged from. The moment this spear appeared, the people from supporting Xian Island felt like they had to retreat before even trying it out, and they couldn't help but gasp. Needless to say, just this meticulous carving and this concealed aura meant that this was undoubtedly a treasured spear. The people standing closer to the spear could clearly see the fierce spearhead and were left speechless. Those farther away were also trying to figure it out. Yu Qianqiu examined the spear's design and was very satisfied with it. In his rush just now, he had recalled the image of the red dragon in Twilight Valley and applied it to this spear. As expected, the spear's aura was extraordinary. How could he not praise such a masterpiece? Yu Qianqiu coughed and solemnly said, "When this spear first took shape, someone used it to kill a 9,000-year-old flood dragon that was on the verge of ascending. Afterwards, the South Bright ancestor placed 9 dragons on the spear's body, calling it the dragon-slaying spear. The dragon slayer who used this spear once praised that the supreme cultivator's treasured spear slays dragons. No one in the world dares to disobey, and the heavenly sword does not appear." The dragon-slaying spear? This spear once slaughtered a flood dragon that was on the verge of ascending. Fan Benlei said in disbelief. The people from supporting Xian Island also stared at the spear, and Jin Yan asked in shock, "The heavenly sword does not appear, and who can contend with it? Does this mean that there is another heavenly spear that can contend with the dragon-slaying spear?" That heavenly sword refers to the heavenly sword, not the spear, but it's also incredibly sharp, Yu Qianqiu somewhat awkwardly explained. He thought to himself, "I can't talk nonsense anymore. If I continue, Great Hero Jin will be so angry that he transmigrates to settle the score with me." He quickly changed the topic and said, "Everyone, shouldn't you quickly hand the spear over to Elder Dongfang? If we continue to talk, I'm afraid there will be a problem." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Only now did they remember that they were only looking at the spear, and they neglected the desperate Dongfang Chong Ao. Jin Yan and Fan Benlei nodded at Quan Deming at the same time. Quan Deming grabbed the spear and instantly felt a bone-piercing cold. He couldn't help but praise, "Good spear." Everyone stepped aside, and Quan Deming walked out with the spear in hand. He transmitted his voice to Dongfang Chang'ao. "Elder Dongfang, don't panic. We have already found you the peerless godly weapon dragon-slaying spear. It will definitely be able to break that strange whip. You must remember, the restriction on this spear is extremely powerful. As long as you don't use your divine sense to check, you will definitely be able to use it safely." Chapter 394. Dongfang Chang'ao, who was trying his best to deal with Quan Deming, took the opportunity to take a glance. When he saw that Quan Deming was indeed holding a black spear in his hand, his spirit was lifted, but he was a little confused. He was good at using spears, so he paid more attention to all kinds of good spears. Where did the dragon-slaying spear come from? Why hadn't he heard of it before? When Yen Bu Gue saw the spear in Quan Deming's hand, his expression changed immediately. He could guess what was going to happen next. He transmitted a message to Yen Biao. "Be careful, Mr. Yen. Supporting Xian Island is going to send a spear into the battlefield. This spear might be able to break Mr.'s whip. You must not let it fall into the hands of Dongfang Chang'ao." Yen Biao stopped in mid-air. Although he looked relaxed, he didn't dare to get too close to Dongfang Chang'ao. He was constantly on guard, afraid that Dongfang Chang'ao would launch another sneak attack. He was really shocked just now. When he heard Yen Bu Gue's telepathic message, he looked towards the direction of supporting Immortals Island. As expected, there was someone holding a black spear. He couldn't help but smile and reply to Yen Bu Gue. "Palace Master Yen is worrying too much. The black dragon whip in our hands is made from a flood dragon that had cultivated for thousands of years. He extracted its tendons, peeled its scales, and refined its bones. How can it be broken by ordinary treasures?" Yen Bu Gue saw that this guy was underestimating his enemy, so he reminded him again, "Supporting Xian Island is not comparable to ordinary sections. The golden source spear in Dongfang Chang'ao's hands is also an upper-grade treasure. It's just that Mr.'s black dragon whip is able to restrain it. Now that they are taking out something to replace the golden source spear, it's definitely not an ordinary treasure. Mister, you must not be careless." Yen Biao was alert. The two people in the air were looking at the spear in Quan Deming's hand. All the sects also saw some clues and knew that supporting Xian Island had brought out a powerful treasure. Quan Deming looked at the position and transmitted a message. "Elder Dongfang, get ready to pick up the spear." After saying that, he threw the spear. A black shadow drew an arc and landed on a protruding boulder at the bottom of the valley. The black spear was inserted into the rock at an oblique angle. There was almost no sound, only the black end of the spear was exposed. All the sects were shocked. It was indeed a treasured spear. Dongfang Chang'ao, who was fighting, was slightly delighted, while Yen Biao was slightly startled. Both of them immediately locked onto that gun. "Hi!" Dongfang Chang'ao shouted. He had waited for so long in order to think of a way. Now that his fellow sect members had come out to save him with a treasure, success or failure would all depend on the spear below. How could he not give it his all? The spear in his hand shot out 100 spear shadows with all his might. Golden light shone as he forced the black dragon whip away. In a flash, he quickly descended. "Dongfang, don't run!" Yen Biao shouted. At this time, he was also a little anxious. He made a hand seal, and the black dragon whip chased after Dongfang Chang'ao. Everyone's eyes were focused on the battle between the two. They knew that this was the crucial moment. About 100 meters above the ground, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. Dongfang Chang'ao suddenly stopped, turned around, and used all his strength to shake off the long whip with his spear. Everyone thought that he would be able to pick up the spear below. Unexpectedly, he raised his head and looked at Yen Biao, who was rushing down, and shouted, "Kill!" Then, he raised the golden origin spear and rushed towards Yen Biao. His imposing manner was incomparably valiant. The two of them rushed at each other, and their speed seemed to close in an instant. Yen Biao originally wanted to use the long whip to entangle Dongfang Chang'ao so that he could keep the spear below to avoid any worries. Who knew that Dongfang Chang'ao would turn around and rush back, as if he had set up a trap for him to fall into. The sharp sound of the golden spear pierced through the air, and Yen Biao was almost scared out of his wits. He hurriedly turned around to escape, but it seemed that it was still a little too late. The two of them had already met, and following a cold snort from Dongfang Chang'ao, the golden spear drew out a rain of blood. "Ah!" Yen Biao screamed. One of his thighs was not able to dodge in time, and was cut off on the spot. The Cultivation Alliance immediately cheered, especially Qiu Wu Yuan of 10,000 Demons, who was unusually loud and excited. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. This Dongfang Chang'ao was indeed Dongfang Chang'ao. As long as he was given a chance, he could immediately turn the situation around. This kind of wisdom and courage was definitely not comparable to ordinary people. It was no wonder that he could take on such a heavy responsibility in the world's #1 sect, Fuxian Island. Although Yen Biao had lost a leg, his life was still more important. He continued to run for his life, but his vitality was greatly injured, and his speed was already a lot slower. He desperately ran towards the direction of Yen Bugui and the others, shouting loudly, "Two senior brothers, save me!" Among the dozens of people, 2 people immediately rushed out to rescue him. Yen Bugui anxiously shouted, "Don't break the rules!" But someone beside him pulled his arm. The 2 people could not care so much now. Their junior brother was about to die. Who would care about the rules? At worst, they could just admit defeat. However, the scene that the 2 of them were most worried about still appeared. Dongfang Chang'ao had already caught up to Yen Biao. His expression was as calm as still water, and he raised his spear above Yen Biao's head. The 2 of them immediately shouted, "Show mercy!" Yen Biao turned around in horror, only to see a ray of golden light flying towards him. Dongfang Chang'ao had just used the spear 3 times, and his movements were clean and neat. He was indeed someone who had used the spear for a long time. "Ah!" A few pieces of minced meat and blood fell to the ground, accompanied by a shrill scream. Yen Biao was finished. The Cultivation Alliance once again cheered non-stop. "Junior brother!" The 2 people who were rushing over exclaimed. The 2 people raised their hands and pulled out whips that were exactly the same as Yen Biao's. Dongfang Chang'ao turned around and left, landing on the ground at the fastest speed. Not far away, he saw the ownerless long black whip lying quietly on the ground. He raised his hand and grabbed it, then directly threw it into his storage bag. This could be considered as his spoils of war. Seeing that the 2 people who pulled the whips were picking up the pieces of Yen Biao's body, he looked at the broken leg in front of him. He was afraid that the other party would not let this go so easily. Dongfang Chang'ao first took out an energy recovery pill and swallowed it. At the same time, he stuffed the golden origin spear in his hand into his storage bag. He turned around and grabbed the black spear handle on the boulder behind him. As he grabbed it, His eyes slightly widened. He suddenly pulled out the black dragon slayer spear that was stuck on the boulder and raised it to take a closer look. The long spear was cold and pitch black. The dragon claw held the spear spine, and the 9 dragons' roaming spear was like a raging dragon spitting out cold blades. The entire spear was almost covered by the fine scales of the dragon, and it looked extraordinary. In particular, there seemed to be a huge amount of power contained within it. That kind of terrifying power seemed familiar. Dongfang Chang'ao looked at the fellow sect members of supporting Xian Island in surprise. He had never heard of such a spear in the sect. If there was one, it would have been given to him long ago. He reckoned that it would not have dragged on until now. Elder Dongfang, you have won the first round. The 2 consecrators have summoned you back. Dongfang Chang'ao suddenly received a voice transmission from Quan Deming. He nodded slightly and flew back to the people of supporting Xian Island in a flash. The surroundings were filled with cheers. The Cultivation Alliance had won the first round, and all the sects were cheering. Elder Dongfang is indeed amazing. Yu Qianqiu praised happily. This really made him overjoyed. He had not even used the spear, and he had already earned 50 million. Even if he lost in the end, he could still earn 10 million. If he had known earlier, he would not have spent 40 million. Dongfang Chang'ao was startled. Why was this guy here? He nodded and did not say anything. However, Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand and said, Elder Dongfang, please return the Dragon Slayer spear to me. This spear is yours? Dongfang Chang'ao looked at the fellow sect members in surprise. Finally, his eyes fell on Quan Deming. The latter nodded silently and said, I borrowed it from Yu Qianqiu for emergencies. I promised him that I would return it to him after 1 round. This. Dongfang Chang'ao's eyes lingered on the spear. He was a little reluctant to part with it. After a little hesitation he said decisively, Yu Qianqiu, are you selling this spear? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, No. I won't sell it no matter how much money you give me. Elder Dongfang, please return the spear to me. At this moment, someone in the valley suddenly shouted, Middle stage tribulation passing cultivator, Yan Feng is here to accept the challenge. Dongfang Chang'ao, do you dare to come down and fight me? Everyone from supporting Xian Island looked over. It was none other than one of Yan Biao's senior brothers. It seemed like he wanted to take revenge. Dongfang Chang'ao snorted and turned to Yu Qianqiu and said, Yu Qianqiu, lend me the spear for 1 more round. I will return it to you after I use it. Chang'ao. Jin Yan stopped him and shook his head. Supporting Xian Island has to fight for the first round. Since we have already won, let the other sects do the rest. Supporting Xian Island only needs to make a move at the crucial moment. Dongfang Chang'ao stopped and pondered. He knew that the sects had their own considerations. He could not control his own impulse. He looked at the people at the foot of the mountain and gritted his teeth as he handed the Dragon Slayer spear in his hand to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu took it and touched it before stuffing it into his storage bag. He bowed to Jin Yan and said, After the challenge ends, I will come back to find you. Jin Yan nodded with a gloomy expression. Just touching the spear had cost supporting Immortal Island 50 million. If he had known that Dongfang Chang'ao would kill like that, he would have just thrown something as a trigger. There was no need to waste so much money. Yu Qianqiu did not care so much. After leaving supporting Xian Island, he went back to the 4 families. Ze popped her head over and asked curiously, I saw it just now. The gun that was thrown down seems to have been taken out by you? Yu Qianqiu looked at her. It was good to have a high cultivation. So many people were blocking and yet she saw it. Actually, it was not just Ze who saw it. Many people saw it. Even if they did not see it, they would have guessed it. If supporting Xian Island really had a spear, they would have taken it out long ago. There was no need to surround him and take out a spear. If it was not his, who else could it be? Yan Biao's senior apprentice brother was still shouting, What? Dongfang Chang'ao does not dare to come out, but the whole Chinese cultivation world does not dare to come out? Are you all cowards? Who will fight me? He shouted and scolded for a long time, but no one from the sects came out. The key was that everyone knew how powerful the whip was from Dongfang Chang'ao's battle. Those with the same cultivation as Dongfang Chang'ao would not be able to deal with it better. and the cultivators in the final stage of tribulation passing couldn't come out because of the rules. For a moment, people from the sects looked at each other. That whip was troublesome. Yu Qianqiu looked left and right for a long time. Seeing that everyone was still hesitating, he could not help but laugh. Hee. Since everyone is so polite, I won't be polite. Ziyi's eyes brightened. You want to go up? His fighting style was always so novel. She liked watching it. Hee. What do you think? We can't let people laugh at us Chinese cultivation world for not having anyone. Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched as he drew a machete in each hand and shouted, I'm coming. Chapter 395. To shout like that at this time, it would be the center of attention. Bai Shan still wanted to persuade him, but it was too late. A silhouette dashed down the mountain. He didn't fly, but rather he leaped. Holding 2 knives bigger than a human, he fanned himself and rushed down the mountain like a bat. His movements extremely fast. Although the crowd did not see clearly who it was, who else could it be other than Yu Qianqiu, who came from the 4 great families and held such strange knives? All the sects looked at each other, speechless, and felt a little ashamed. So many sects, but no one came out to fight, forcing a guy who could not fly to run and jump down to fight. How could they not feel ashamed? They were afraid that they would not be able to avoid a round of humiliation. Yan Feng's junior brother died, and he wanted to find someone to vent his anger, but he did not expect that the one who came to challenge him was a guy who could not even fly, and looked very young. He was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, Is there no one in China? Haha, young man, I don't kill nameless people. Seeing that your courage is commendable, I will spare your life. Quickly go back and call your elders. Hee. You don't know me, what a joke. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He did not stop and directly rushed over. Be careful. Yan Bugui suddenly shouted from the top of the mountain. The stumbling Yu Qianqiu ran all the way down and was already close to Yan Feng. Yan Feng still did not know the opponent's background and was still laughing. Hearing the warning, Yan Feng looked around and saw that the young man who rushed over did not say anything, but raised his knife and slashed at him. His movements were quite smooth. Yan Feng sneered disdainfully, waved the whip in his hand to block, and said in a deep voice, It seems that I have to kill a nameless person today. His voice stopped abruptly. The black knife waved, and the snake-like black whip was cut into 2. Yan Feng felt his neck cold, and his eyes opened wide in disbelief, but his vision had changed, and he saw his chin on the cold and wide knife. The young man did not hesitate to wave the other knife, and split a headless body in half, and his vision gradually blurred. The whole place was silent. Even the sound of the wind seemed to have quietened down. Only the words of the young man with the saber could be heard. Yu Qianqiu stood with his saber in front of him, looking at the head that had died with its eyes wide open. He said expressionlessly, So what if he's famous or not? 1 saber is enough. With a twist of the blade, the head fell off. Yu Qianqiu quickly went over to take the storage bag from the corpse and put it away. Then, he turned around and ran back up the mountain with the 2 broadswords. What was the point of staying here if he didn't run after the fight? Safety first. When Yu Qianqiu ran back to the 4 great clans and put away the 2 sabers, everyone still felt as if they were in a dream. Running down just like that, chopping people down with 1 slash, then running back and it was over just like that? Junior brother. A sorrowful howl came from the mountain where Yan Bugui was. The last of the 3 brothers landed in a flash. Good. The people of the Cultivation Alliance reacted, and immediately cheered loudly. When had they ever seen such a classic battle? Going down the mountain only needed 1 slash to cut off the head of a mid-stage tribulation passing expert, and then turning back, it only took a moment. It was so cool that they had no words to say. Especially the last sentence. So what if he's famous or not? 1 saber is enough. It pushed everyone's emotions to a climax. The applause was explosive, and Ziyi, who was stunned and then came back to her senses, kept clapping. Looking at the people around her, her face showed a smile that had never been seen before. Elder Bai's disciple was really extraordinary. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu came out in a straightforward manner, cupped his fists, and bowed to the people around him, saying, I was lucky, I was lucky. What he got in return was even more intense cheers. A consecrator from the 10,000 demons was called Neo Senator. He looked at Yu Qianzhou, and suddenly said to Qiu Wuyuan in a deep voice, Qiu Wuyuan, he originally wanted to join the 10,000 demons, but you chased him away. After this is over, you can go and ask Yu Qianzhou if he is still willing to join the 10,000 demons. Qiu Wuyuan nodded speechlessly. The people from the supporting Immortals Island were even more amazed, shaking their heads and smiling bitterly. This guy was just wandering around here. How did he come back with a saber in the blink of an eye and kill an expert in the middle stage of the Crossing Calamity stage? Dongfang Chang'ao recalled the scene of Yu Qianzhou cutting off the long whip with a saber inside. This saber is really extraordinary. I wonder how does that spear compare to it? In fact, everyone understood that the reason why Yu Qianzhou was able to kill with a saber was because the other party was careless and didn't know his background. He didn't expect that his whip could be easily cut off, so he lost his life. But for the Cultivation Alliance, this was something to gain face, so everyone was equally excited. They were right to think this way, but they didn't think about it. If it was an ordinary person, who would dare to use a saber to kill someone in the Crossing Calamity stage with a nascent soul stage cultivation? In fact, Yu Qianzhou also thought that he would have to go through a lot of trouble, but he didn't expect that the other party didn't know him, so he made a decision in the blink of an eye: kill him. People who can make such a prompt decision are not as easy as they say or think. An old man in embroidered clothes stood next to Yan Bugui. He had been staring at the purple clothes next to Yu Qianzhou, and suddenly asked, "Is the person with the saber Yu Qianzhou that man who mentioned? Who else could it be other than that rascal?" Yan Bugui stared at Yu Qianzhou and said with hatred, Yan Feng really underestimated his enemy too much. He was actually defeated so easily. It's not necessarily because Yan Feng underestimated his enemy. If it were me, I'm afraid I would also have made a mistake. It's the first time I've seen such a brave young man. No wonder he's so famous. The old man in embroidered clothes looked at Yu Qianzhou's eyes, revealing a sense of admiration, and asked, "I heard that this Yu Qianzhou also defeated the head of China's Daluo sect, Luo Qingtian. Didn't you investigate his background?" "We did, but there's no way to find out. After this guy was expelled from Fuxian Island, he rarely appeared in the cultivation world. No one knows where he is, but he appeared again recently," Yan Bugui said. "He disappeared for a period of time, but now he appears again, and he even has a treasure that ordinary people can't have?" The old man in embroidered clothes looked at the purple clothes, then looked at Yu Qianzhou, and nodded thoughtfully. "I'm afraid it's not that simple." "Murderer, state your name." After the eldest senior martial brother collected his junior martial brother's corpse, he pointed at Yu Qianzhou and shouted, "Mid-stage tribulation passing cultivator, Yan Cheng accepts the challenge. Who dares to fight?" This was clearly telling Yu Qianzhou to go down and fight him. Damn it! With so many people watching, you want me to go down just because you tell me to? Dongfang Chang'ao also killed your junior martial brother. Why are you only looking for me? Am I easy to bully? Yu Qianzhou looked down expressionlessly, pretending that he didn't hear anything. In his heart, he was thinking that Fuxian Island wouldn't give up just like that, and they might even have to rent his spear. "I was stupid just now. I can earn money for free. Why should I go down and do such a sinful thing? A bunch of cowards." Yan Cheng was so angry that he started cursing, and the more he cursed, the uglier it became. The more people heard, the uglier their faces became. Think about it, there were so many people here, and there were many people who were stronger than Yan Cheng, but no one came out to fight. This was really embarrassing. The key was that the opponent's whip was too powerful. Although they won the first 2 rounds, even if they asked Dongfang Chang'ao to go up, it would still be difficult for them to beat him. At the end of the day, no sect would be like Yu Qianzhou, running around with precious treasures. At present, they could only deal with the treasures in Yu Qianzhou's hands. Otherwise, they couldn't let Yu Qianzhou wait until they returned to their sects to pick out suitable treasures before they started fighting. The cursing was still going on, but no one came out to fight. Time was also passing, and if no one came out to fight after 2 hours, Yan Bugui would take the initiative to win. Not only would they get 1 billion spirit stones, they would also be able to damage the reputation of the Chinese cultivation world. At this moment, the 10,000 demons' faces were the ugliest. The leader of the righteous sects, Fuxian Island, had won the first round, but as the leader of the evil sects, the 10,000 demons, there was no response at all. After they returned, the prestige of the 10,000 demons in the evil sects would definitely plummet. Qiu Yuan was now a little uneasy and restless. He wasn't confident that he could deal with that strange whip, and if he didn't fight, how would the 10,000 demons face their fellow evil sects in the future? His restlessness fell into Yan Bugui's eyes, and a trace of bitterness flashed across Yan Bugui's face. He gritted his teeth and sent a telepathic message to Yan Cheng, who was below. The person who killed your junior brother is called Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu? Yan Cheng suddenly pointed his finger and shouted, "You coward, is Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. F***CK. Who told him? He immediately looked around, looking for any suspicious people. He believed that Yan Bugui's side, seeing that victory was in sight and that they were about to reap rich benefits, would definitely not reveal his name and let Yan Cheng curse him. Instead, it was very likely that someone on his side was hoping that he would fight, so his name was leaked. His first thought was that he had been betrayed by someone on his side, but in the end, every sect he looked at was suspicious. Forcing me? The more it is like this, the more I won't go. Yu Qianqiu was a little angry. But Yan Qing obviously had some understanding of Yu Qianqiu's name, as he said all kinds of nasty things. Things like disrespecting his masters, betraying one sect after another as a double surname slave. This challenge had become a war of words. All the sects looked at Yu Qianqiu, wondering how long could he endure it? Ze stared at the people below with a frosty face. It was fine if it was just 1 or 2 sentences, but if he continued to endure it, he wouldn't be able to show his face in the future. Yu Qianqiu finally couldn't listen to it anymore. With a livid face, he stepped forward and shouted, "How dare you shout at me? Are you tired of living? Are you courting death? Yu Qianqiu, come down and fight if you have the guts." Yan Cheng pointed his finger and shouted, "Since you're tired of living, I'll send you down there to accompany your 2 junior brothers." After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking in a cold tone, he waved his hand and a green flying sword flashed out from his sleeve, quickly carrying him into the sky. In the sky, he waved his 2 sleeves continuously, and streams of green light flew out continuously. The 2 sleeves were like storage bags, and no one knew how many flying swords were hidden in them. 1,000 flying swords danced in the sky, and the imposing manner was really shocking. Yu Qianqiu kept his sleeves. So far, with his current cultivation, controlling 1,000 flying swords at the same time was already his limit. Moreover, the green fire element in his body was almost depleted, and even if he wanted to release more swords, he couldn't release more. Chapter 396. The sunlight refracted the green shadows, and the green light flowed endlessly, covering the entire valley, causing the entire valley to sink into a hazy green light. Everyone squinted their eyes at the piercing green light, but they still couldn't conceal their shock. Rumor had it that there was an extraordinary person in the ancient times who could control 10,000 swords at the same time. The rumor was not to be believed, but now everyone had witnessed Yu Qianqiu releasing 1,000 flying swords in a fit of rage. They danced in the air and looked at the vast land like a tiger, wanting to take someone's life. Yan Cheng was dumbfounded as he looked up. He subconsciously felt that he had stirred up a hornet's nest. Yan Bugui and the rest looked at each other, then at Yu Qianqiu, who was coldly staring down from the sky. They all had an expression of disbelief. The people of Supporting Immortals Island looked at each other. Guiyuan sword technique. 1,000 swords control. Yan Cheng, do you know your crime? Yu Qianqiu's cold voice descended from the sky and reverberated in the valley. The flying swords above his head all stopped. The dazzling green blades slowly adjusted their direction and stared at Yan Cheng below. The black flame machete was able to take someone's life with a single slash. It was impossible for it to happen again. This time, he sent out all the green flame flying swords that he could control. He wanted to have a fair and square battle, to let the entire cultivation world know of his abilities and that he did not rely on luck to establish himself. A nascent soul cultivator was actually questioning a tribulation passing stage cultivator with such a matter-of-fact tone. Everyone was speechless. They didn't know if Yan Cheng could withstand the power of the 1,000 swords. It seemed that these green flying swords were not ordinary flying swords. If it was them. Thinking of the scene of 1,000 flying swords shooting at them at the same time, everyone subconsciously shivered. Ziyi's gaze lingered on the 1,000 flying swords. Her pretty face was filled with excitement. She clenched her fists tightly. From Yu Qianqiu's domineering aura, she seemed to see the shadow of Senior Bai. The faces of the four major families were filled with solemn respect. The disciple of the old ancestor was not angry, but once he was angry, he would shake the world. What crime did I commit? Yan Cheng smacked his lips and asked dryly. His tone had changed from cursing and arrogant to cautious. When it came to life and death, it was strength that determined the opponent's attitude. Who told you my name? Yu Qianqiu glanced at the surrounding mountains and changed the topic. The moment he said that, the various sects started sizing each other up. In fact, everyone had the same suspicion as Yu Qianqiu. Yan Bugue snorted coldly and transmitted his voice to Yan Cheng. Mr. Yan, you don't have to hesitate. You can tell him that I told you. He had a grudge against Yu Qianqiu, so why would he care about one more dish? Although it didn't matter if he said it, how could Yan Cheng give him up? If he really did that, it wouldn't be a matter of him losing face, but his teacher who lived far away in Xueqi country would lose face with him. Thinking of his teacher who had reached the soul formation stage, Yan Cheng's confidence was boosted. He shouldn't be scared by his pretense. No matter how strong a nascent soul cultivator was, how strong could he be? So he waved his whip and shouted, Yu Qianqiu, if you want to fight, then fight. Don't be so long-winded. At the end of the day, he still didn't have enough confidence. Otherwise, he would have made a move long ago and wouldn't have been so long-winded. You really don't know what's good for you. In my eyes, that lousy whip of yours is no different from withered grass and rotten wood. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and raised his hand. I have 1,000 flying swords waiting for you. If you have the cultivation of the final stage of the Tribulation passing stage, you might be able to escape from my 1,000 flying swords with your teleportation. Unfortunately, you're not. I'll give you one more chance to live. Tell me the person who said my name and cut off your own tongue. Then I'll let you go. Otherwise, you won't be able to see tomorrow's sunrise. After the battle with Luo Qingtian last time, Luo Qingtian's abnormal speed was so fast that even the flying swords couldn't catch up to him. It could be said that Yan Cheng had gained some experience. This time, the flying swords of blue fire were waiting for him in battle. They weren't afraid that Yan Cheng would escape to the sky. Presumptuous! Yan Cheng shouted loudly. His protective upstanding qi instantly surged out from his body and wrapped around himself. The long whip in his hand rose high into the air and shot towards Yu Qianqiu like a spiritual snake. You're courting death. Yu Qianqiu sneered. He pointed with his finger and dozens of streaks of green light flashed out. Like a jackdaw fighting for food, they surrounded the long whip and tossed it around wildly. Even though the flying swords of blue fire were not as good as the flying swords of blue fire, they were still first-rate sharp. Yan Cheng and his two brothers had encountered their nemesis when they encountered Yu Qianqiu. When the black dragon whip and the flying swords of blue fire clashed, it was already pecked all over. The others didn't know, but Yan Cheng immediately sensed it. In his great shock, he made a hand gesture. The black dragon whip made a bam sound and swung its tail in the air. It shook off Guesher's flying swords of blue fire. It turned around and was about to fly back. Yu Qianqiu sneered. If there was only one flying sword of blue fire, perhaps it wouldn't be able to do anything to you. However, there were 1,000 of them here. A small whip could escape to the heavens. The sword gesture was activated. Dozens of flying swords had already cut off the whip's path of retreat. A group of ferocious fellows pounced forward and pecked wildly. It was practically a standard gang fight. Yan Cheng's face was filled with anxiety. The black dragon whip was the weapon that he had relied on to make his name. Once it was destroyed, it would be easier said than done to find another treasured weapon that was just as handy. His hand gesture was almost a mirage. The whip scurried everywhere in midair. It dodged left and right, shook its head and swung its tail. However, Yu Qianqiu's nimbleness in controlling the flying swords was not inferior to his control of the whip. Once the black dragon whip shook off Guesher's flying swords, there would be flying swords that were ready to pounce on Guesher's head, peck at his tail, and pinch at his waist. There was no way for him to escape. He did not allow the whip to escape. He pestered it relentlessly and wrapped it tightly. The divine whip that was previously feared by all the sects was now in such a sorry state. It had no way to escape. Everyone was speechless when they saw this. The people of supporting Immortals Island looked at each other again and again. Ever since Yu Qianchou had used the Gui Yuan sword technique on supporting a mortal's island, everyone had actually studied this sword technique in detail. However, the conclusion that everyone had reached was that it was gaudy. They all felt that it was not practical. Now that 1,000 swords had appeared, just this imposing manner alone was already extraordinary. If they could achieve the effect of Yu Qianchou's usage, even if the quality of the flying swords was not as good as this green flying sword, imagine if someone was entangled by 1,000 flying swords and ganged up on, just like how this whip was entangled. Apart from a few people who possessed great cultivation base, how many people could escape easily? Moreover, Yu Qianchou's cultivation base was only at the nascent soul stage. If it was a cultivator at the crossing calamity stage who was controlling it, what kind of consequences would there be? Just thinking about it made people feel expectant. They were guarding the treasured sword technique left behind by their ancestors without realizing it. Everyone had made an error of judgment. The people of supporting Immortals Island suddenly came to their senses and nodded silently at each other. They decided that when they returned to the sect, they would definitely report this matter to the sect leader. They had to pay attention to the Guiyuan sword technique. Yan Cheng was still trying his best to make hand seals, attempting to use his last effort to save the black dragon whip. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the sharp tail of the whip, which was either refined from a beast horn or a beast tooth, suddenly broke off from the long whip. A few green rays chased after it and stabbed it a few times. When they realized that it was useless, they immediately flashed back to join the group and continued to attack the long black thing. The fung-like tail of the whip fell to the ground sadly. However, it was just the beginning. With it leading the way, the broken whip followed in its footsteps. Yan Cheng felt like crying but had no tears. He stopped making hand seals, and the black dragon whip was dismembered just like that. The victorious green rays seemed to be a little unsatisfied. They flew around in the air for a while. When there was really no target to attack, they obediently returned to their sword positions. When the various sects witnessed this scene, they were speechless. Such a fierce sword technique was simply unheard of and unseen. Today was an eye-opener for them. When everyone looked at Yu Qianchou again, their gazes were much more solemn. In the past, when they heard that Yu Qianchou defeated Luo Qingtian, many people did not see it with their own eyes. They thought that it was because of the sharpness of the treasure and luck. Now, everyone clearly saw the word strength. Although the outcome of this battle had not been decided, Yu Qianchou had such a powerful and outstanding sword technique. There was no doubt that he should have a place in the cultivation world. The contemptuous gazes of the various sects had disappeared. From today onwards, they would look at this young man with a rather bad reputation. Ziyi's eyes were full of splendor. She watched with relish. It seemed that no matter when or who Yu Qianchou fought, she would not be very worried. Because of her blind worship of Bai Chongqun, she had already thought that Elder Bai's disciple should be like this. Yan Cheng looked around a little gloomily. Thousands of flying swords were floating in the valley, ready to attack from all angles, aiming at him inside the protective aura. The cyan sword net completely surrounded him. At this moment, whether it was the Cultivation Alliance or Yan Bugui and the others, when they saw this scene in the valley, they all felt a little ashamed for Yan Cheng. A Tribulation passing cultivator fighting with a nascent soul cultivator was actually trapped to the point that he could not move an inch. It was simply a joke. Yu Qianchou glanced at Yan Bugui, who was on the top of the mountain, and smiled faintly at Yan Cheng. Although you were the one who provoked me, I have always been a kind person. You are the only one left out of the three of you. I can't bear to kill you. If you kneel down and beg for mercy, I can spare your life. As soon as he said this, several cold snorts came from Yan Bugui's side, echoing in the valley. It could be seen that the person who made the sound had a very high cultivation. That group of people stared at Yu Qianchou like knives. Yan Cheng was representing them. If he knelt down and admitted defeat, he would not only lose face, but Yan Bugui and the others who took the initiative to challenge him would also be completely disgraced. This was just like if someone from the Cultivation Alliance knelt down and admitted defeat, then the face at the Huaxia cultivation world would be lost even if they wanted to in the future. The people from the Cultivation Alliance also secretly clicked their tongues, thinking that Yu Qianchou had really gone too far by saying such words. But they didn't know that Yu Qianchou had other considerations. There were rules in the challenge. If one party admitted defeat, the other party could not kill again. He provoked them with words because he wanted to cut off the other party's way of admitting defeat, and then kill them. He never thought that letting his opponent live was a good thing. Since he had decided to use this battle to earn a name in the cultivation world, then the experience from his previous life told him that it was often more effective to win people over with virtue than to have a fierce reputation. As long as he stood firm, he could slowly accumulate virtue and do good in the future. Sure enough, when Yan Qing heard this, he immediately flew into a rage. He pointed his finger and shouted, "You Qianqiu, don't be so arrogant. You want to force me to beg for mercy and admit defeat with just a flying sword? What a joke." Clang! As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a green light hit his protective vigor chi like lightning. The protective vigor chi was not damaged at all, and the green light quickly returned to its place. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said with a smile, "Sure enough, you have something to rely on, no wonder. But today, I will let you foreign cultivators learn a lesson. How can the Huaxia cultivation world be a place where you can mess around?" You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.